I'm going to tell the truth first about all the anxiety and wasted thought about what the preseason was as it related to how the expansion of the playoff field was going to change college football, about how we would have meaningless regular season games. You tell me that Auburn Texas A&M trip was meaningless. You tell me that the Alabama Oklahoma game was meaningless. We've had elimination games for the last month plus. So the regular season has not been watered down at all. And if anything, it's enhanced the number of fan bases that are involved in meaningful games as we've gone through late October and into November.
It's rivalry week, Cole, and it could not matter any more than it does right now, especially right here in the Palmetto State. Clemson hosting South Carolina on Saturday. You just heard the voice of Chris Doering, ESPN and SEC analyst, and I could not agree with anyone anymore, Cole. I can't tell you how many times I argued with the person who sat in this seat right here a year ago about what was going to happen to college football when we expanded the 12-team playoffs. Oh, it's going to kill the regular season. Oh, rivalry games are going to mean less. Oh, fewer and fewer fans. They were all wrong. Every single one of them was wrong. Tyler.
How many times did you actually argue? You said you don't know how many times. Was it a lot of times?
It was a lot of times.
More than one?
It was a lot of times.
More than twice?
Plenty.
Going three times. Can I get a guy in the back?
Not one, not two, not three, LeBron, not 4, 5, 6.
A million times.
A million times. Look, everybody thought that this was going to ruin. The playoffs were going to ruin the college football season, and they were dead wrong. You know why? Because rivalries matter. Because now you have to win your conference if you want to guarantee yourself a spot in. You cannot coast down the stretch. It's awesome, Cole. And I can't fathom anybody thinking now that we should go back to a 14 playoff.
No, there's no going back. I like the concept of the expanded playoff more than I originally thought I would. I will eat crow. I didn't know how I'd like it. Obviously, a little optimistic when it came to expanding the postseason. As of right now, I'm good. I like it. I like what it offers. I like that there are a lot of teams like South Carolina this season that are playing for something down the stretch. Now, grand scheme of things, will that matter in a month and a half from now? I don't know. But right now, I like it.
But see, I don't look at everything through the lens of how this affects the playoff. I don't look at everything through the lens of if it doesn't affect the playoff, I'm not interested in it at all. That's people who have little attention span. That's people who need everything jacked to the nines in terms of meaning and gas behind it to find any interest in it whatsoever. And I think those people are sad. I think that's kind of a pathetic way to look at things. You know why? Because you're eventually going to get bored at that, and you're going to look for that next dopamine hit, and then that next dopamine hit, and then that next dopamine hit. It's the addict's way of looking at things, that if it's not taking me to the highest place I can fathom going right now, then it's worthless. And those people are dead wrong. Somebody get in the comment section, please, on the Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at The Fan Upstate, and tell me that the college football playoff, as it's playing out right now, sucks and why. Don't just text in, it sucks. Like, tell me why. If you really believe that the 12-team playoff, the way that it's played out in its very first year, sucks, give me a real cogent reason why, and we can actually have a conversation. But welcome in to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson, our last time together before the Thanksgiving holiday. Cole, you're taking tomorrow off. I guess what, traveling to go see family?
No.
You going hunting? You just staying at home?
No, yes.
Okay.
You should have known. You should have known. You should have known the answer to that.
Well, the golf course where I saw that flock of turkeys the other day, it's just right over there. So if you want to head over as soon as the show is over and go ahead and stake out your spot, go for it.
It's not turkey season, so I'll have to wait till April. However, I saw something funny today. South Carolina counties where there are more turkeys than people. No kidding. There's a map.
Oh my
Cherokee County, Newberry, Chester, Fairfield, Lancaster, Kershaw, Sumter, Lee, Darlington, and Chesterfield County. Only in South Carolina where we have a state highlighted of the counties where there are more turkeys than there are people. That's fantastic.
So, Cole, this being rivalry weekend, it adds intrigue to games that otherwise wouldn't have a ton of intrigue nationally, right? Like rivalry weekend and the playoff gasses up this South Carolina Clemson game because there are playoff implications on the line. If Clemson can just not crap the bed against South Carolina, there's a very good chance that they will be in the playoff. They will backdoor their way into this thing at the very last minute. Are you telling me, Cole, that if Texas gets blown out by A&M, they might fall to a really dangerous spot? Are you telling me that might not happen to Tennessee? Yeah. Also, Tennessee at Vanderbilt. So these games, these rivalry games now mean even more, especially for Vanderbilt, for South Carolina, for Clemson, for even the Arizona State game.
Before we get into the actual picking of them, the only thing that I will say it'll be interesting to see, Diesel, is how the conference championship games will be valued going forward after this year, because we played audio yesterday from Lane Kiffin. I just am very interested to see if more and more coaches agree that conference championship games are not the best way to get into the playoff. I know it's a guaranteed bid in the postseason. However, just like Lane Kiffin said yesterday, there's more risk than there is reward if you're on the bubble, right? Because if you lose, you might be out completely. So I agree with you on the rivalry games, but I do think it'll be very interesting to see what happens to conference championships in the next 10 years.
JD brings up the point. I'll say it sucks because the SEC scheduling did themselves no favors, so Big Ten looks like an elite conference. JD, explain to me what you mean by that, because the Big Ten has held 3 of the top 4 spots for a very, very long time, right? It's not like the SEC was 1, 2, and 4, and 2 and 4 lost late and screwed the conference over. That's not what happened there. So I don't know what you mean there by scheduling in the SEC screwed themselves over. JB says, now, JD, we knew when they went to 16 teams that the SEC was going to eat itself from the inside out. JB, you bring up a very interesting point there. And the fact that the SEC has taken the strategy, and you can argue right or wrong here, the SEC has taken the strategy of adding only the best of the best when it comes to football, right? They're also most of the time getting pretty good basketball and pretty good baseball with that as well. But the problem is, and this is something I pointed out a couple of years ago when they announced that Texas and OU were coming into the conference, and of course with the addition of Texas A&M a couple of years before that, that if you keep adding consistently good teams, every team in the conference, especially the ones that fancy themselves as the elite teams, are going to have to get used to seeing 2 and 3 losses on the schedule, because it's almost impossible when you keep adding quality teams to run the gauntlet and go undefeated, right? Just like JB said, eating themselves from the inside out. You set yourself up in a position where you may actually be doing harm and pushing teams that, let's just say, for example, that the SEC added a couple of weak teams. Let's pretend they added West Virginia and Kansas, just for the sake of argument here. Those are probably 2 built-in wins for the top half and top third of the SEC. But no, you didn't do that. You added 2 great brands and 2 really good football programs. So you're now at least taking a 50-50 chance of winning those games and possibly a higher chance of taking losses.
Texter says, I just heard the take from a national radio show. Would it be better to try to schedule as many teams as you can and go 12-0 to guarantee a playoff spot? Well, obviously, Texter, the name of the game is losing as little as you can. However, it's like I said last week, what we've learned is –
I mean, how'd that work for Indiana?
Well, what we've learned is, going to my point, what I was just going to say is losing early is okay. Losing late's not. It's as simple as that. If you lose early, you're okay. Ask Notre Dame. If you lose late, you're going to put yourself behind the 8 ball. So I understand that, you can have blemishes, but you can't have blemishes after, let's say, Halloween. Halloween's like the cutoff. You've got to stop losing by then.
Yeah, Rick Neuheisel makes a really interesting point on that, and I'll get to that here in just a second. But JD says the SEC gave Texas a super easy road for whatever DA reason. Well, I mean, I don't know if somebody's actually sitting down, moving pieces around, or if they just let the computers create schedules for these teams, but it's the luck of the draw, right? Like they got lucky and got a good schedule this year. And sometimes you have a good program that doesn't live up to its billing, or you have a program that's not typically very, very good.
Yeah, but I could say
that has bumped up.
Yeah, you could say the same thing with South Carolina, though. They didn't play Texas or Georgia.
Correct. Well, and that's also one of the big problems. It's not going to change anybody's mind on this, right? But that's one of the big problems with going to such gigantic conferences.
Yeah, you can't,
no
division.
Conferences are supposed to be 9 or 10 teams so that you can play everyone every year. And you don't have these convoluted tiebreaker scenarios because you have head-to-head matchups, right? But that's what's happened as Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti and those that came before them have gotten greedy as hell and have chosen to expand these conferences and expand these conferences. You think that's not going to get worse if you expand conferences to 20 teams? Yeah. There's a lot of people already saying, let's go to 20 teams. Let's go to 20 teams in the SEC. Let's add 4 more. Why would you do that? Because you're not going to add weak programs. You're not going to add Wake Forest. You're going to go add the best that you can possibly add.
All right, you want to get Dewey before we get into the games?
Yeah, let's get Dewey.
Dewey, our daily Dewey. What's up, man?
Yes. Well, first of all, you can't say whether or not the playoffs suck or not because they haven't been played yet in this format. Secondly, what sucks is the way they're being the selection committee. It's time to throw Alabama in the garbage.
I agree with Dewey.
But yet they're going to be playing Nick Saban-ish, still worshiping him, and then it's ridiculous. And then these other teams it's ridiculous. They're not human. They're computers. They're robots.
Well, if they were computers and robots, Dewey, they'd have a better chance of getting it right, wouldn't they?
Breaking news. For the first time ever, I completely agree with everything Dewey just said. I mean, he's right. Dewey, I agree with you.
It's a travesty. But you can't say whether the playoffs suck or not because they haven't been played.
I like it.
Played, you'd be like, yeah, this works.
Thanks, Dewey. That's good. They haven't been played. We don't know.
So
right.
Cole, this is our last opportunity here. Oh, let me get to that Rick Neuheisel audio for you, by the way. Rick Neuheisel, former head coach in the Pac-12. He was at UCLA, a couple other places before that. Here's what Rick Neuheisel, and he's not really saying anything we don't already know, but this is what Rick Neuheisel says about what factors he knows without a doubt absolutely matter when it comes to the college football playoff selection committee.
Here are the 2 rules that we know are steadfast. Number 1, brands matter.
Shouldn't.
You don't take Ohio State and put them past TCU and Baylor in year 1 of the deal just because they won. When TCU wins the game 52-7 or something close to that in the final week of the season and gets jumped for that spot. Ohio State jumped them. Brands matter. And brands of conferences matter.
It's not supposed to.
Okay, not just the school brand, but the brand of the conference. That is steadfast. Number 2, late losses far worse than early losses.
So number 2 is thanks, Captain Obvious.
Yeah.
Number 1, brands matter and conference brands matter. Cole, I thought this whole point, this whole time we've been arguing the 12 best teams should get in.
Yeah,
Rick Neuheisel just said brands matter. And look, I know that I'm kind of parsing his words here just a little bit. What Rick is trying to say is that if Ohio State has a weak performance in week number 14 against Michigan, and a team that's sitting just below them blows a team out, they shouldn't be able to jump. A weaker team shouldn't be able to jump a stronger team just because they had one late data point that makes them look really impressive. I realize that I'm parsing his words here, but brands and conference shouldn't matter because we're supposed to be putting the 12 best teams in the playoff, right? Yeah. Shouldn't matter what sticker you have on the side of your helmet. Shouldn't matter what patch you have on your shoulder pads. Shouldn't matter what they paint on the 25-yard line. It's just supposed to be the 12 best teams, right? So Rick is proving that the college football playoff is corrupt right there in that statement.
I don't think that it should. And if he's actually in the know, then I'm with you. I don't think it should matter either. Hopefully he's just dead wrong. Hopefully it doesn't actually impact it. Texter says, do you think South Carolina will jump Bama if they beat Clemson, even if Bama beats Auburn? Hashtag go Cox. Texter, I don't. Not if Bama beats Auburn. Now, if Bama were to lose to Auburn, maybe so. But I don't think they're going to devalue head-to-head in that situation enough for South Carolina to jump Bama. That's one of the more interesting points, though, when you look at tonight's rankings and next week's rankings as well. I just don't know that they're going to be able to say, hey, Carolina, even if they beat Clemson, you might have an argument, but then if they were to jump them, how does head-to-head actually play into what the committee does?
Quick reminder that our Upset Picks Challenge, brought to you by Ingles, starts in just 44 minutes. Today and tomorrow are going to be the only 2 days that you can get in your Week 14 upset picks. So pass it along. If you've got a Tolo buddy that listens to the show that participates in this challenge who is not paying attention, make sure you let them know, or don't if you want to screw them over and not let them pick this week. That's your prerogative. Strategy is strategy. But letting you know that we're going to open this thing up at 4 o'clock today. You'll have the remainder of the show today and, of course, on Wednesday as well. But Thursday and Friday, we're not going to be here, and we will not be going back to check the text line for picks. They will not count.
Yeah, we've got Chapel Fowler at 325. So he is almost back from the Dabo Swinney press conference, Diesel. Some really big news from a letter that was sent out from Graham Neff last night. So we'll have Chapel Fowler at 325, and we'll ask him about everything that was said today from Dabo Swinney. We'll also talk to Jack Veltri, who was in the Shane Beamer presser today at 1 o'clock. So both pressers being accounted for today on the show.
You know, Cole, I had every intention here to play a game in this first segment of the show and pick 11 of what I would consider the biggest rivalry games this weekend against the spread and see who's best at picking these games against the spread. But we're kind of short on time, and I feel like it's going to take a little bit of time to work our way through all of these. So let's hold that until later on in the show. And we'll get to our picking against the spread of 11 games. I picked 11 so that we wouldn't end in a tie, possibly. Yep. So that's going to be coming up a little bit later on in the show. Don't know exactly when we're going to be able to squeeze that back in. But also, a heads up for you, big news today out of the ACC. Mac Brown is gone. He has been fired as the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. And coming up at 4 o'clock, from 4 to 4:15, we'll give you a chance to win Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets that show Friday, December 13th at Bon Secours Wellness Arena.
Texter says 4 conference champs, Notre Dame this year, and top non-power 4 team get in. Top 12 teams have nothing to do with it. It's top 6. And then those teams, no matter how bad they are, 7 teams if Notre Dame has 3 losses.
Well, Texter, I mean, to the point that that Georgia and Alabama have all lost a handful of games this year. I understand Alabama got absolutely roasted last week by OU, but those are the only SEC teams that have multiple top 25 wins. So when you're looking at the non-power 4 champs, the power 4 champs, you're looking at a weak Texas, and you're saying that a team that finishes outside of that, basically an at-large team, doesn't have a chance to win this thing. Well, I would argue that an at-large team, Georgia probably going to be an at-large team, they have a very good shot to win this. Yeah, they're flawed, but they also have shown multiple times that they can beat top 25 teams. So I love the chaos in this. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
It's fun for radio.
And I love that they implemented a non-negotiable structure to make conference championships matter. I absolutely love that. And as of right now, as long as that's the stipulation, I think that might be one of the only things that keeps conferences from breaking back apart into smaller, 8, 9, 10 team conferences, because how are we going to deal with now having 8 conference champs that we would need to put in.
Jared asked on the text line 71307, could Clemson get in as an at-large? Jared, I mean, they could. That's the possibility right now. They could. Not will, but could because of what happened last weekend. Prior to what happened last weekend, I would say no. Clemson is not going to get an at-large. However, after what we saw, the chaos this weekend where we had Indiana lose, who was 5, Alabama lose, who was 7, Ole Miss lose, who was 9, BYU lose, who was 14, A&M, who was 15, lose, 16 Colorado lose, and 19 Army lose. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losses inside the top 20. Absolute chaos last weekend. So now, yeah, Jared, they do have a shot at an at-large. Is it a good shot? I don't know that I would classify it as a good shot, but they do have they definitely have a shot now.
Yeah, one of the problems for Clemson is that we don't have any head-to-heads in rivalry week this weekend, so you're not guaranteed that one of the teams ahead of them is going to lose. To be safe, Clemson really needs to jump to about 10. Maybe Indiana falls again if they have a weak performance against Purdue because Purdue's awful.
Yeah.
So if Indiana doesn't go out there and just absolutely light them up, they could potentially fall just a little bit more. You know, they could say the bubble has burst on Indiana. See, 2 games in a row, they're not as good as we thought they were. And, of course, Clemson has to contend with the possibility of who's behind them, you know, especially the Big 12 champ, because right now, Cole, I'm looking at the Big 12, at least as far as the rankings go. You got Arizona State and BYU both sitting there at 14 and 19, and somebody's got to win the Big 12 championship, and they very well could jump as one of the highest ranked champs.
Show question for today's program. I tweeted it out an hour ago. Want to get your thoughts, Tolos, on this at the Cole Bryson. What is the most hated Thanksgiving side? There were 4 options: cranberry sauce, deviled eggs, green bean casserole, and the 4th was other. Diesel, right now it's a tight race between cranberry sauce and green bean casserole for the most hated Thanksgiving sides. I thought deviled eggs would win.
As a kid, I hated green bean casserole. I kind of like it now.
I kind of like it.
I don't hate cranberry sauce.
See, I used to hate cranberry sauce. Now I love it. Love cranberry sauce now. So that is today's show question.
My brother-in-law will only eat it if it comes out of the can and still has the ridges on the can.
I like it. I like it a lot. Get in on the votes at the Cole Bryson. 69 votes right now. And again, 39% of the votes going to cranberry sauce. Chapel Fowler State newspaper. He was in Dabo Sweeney's presser earlier today, and he joins us next. A Clemson and South Carolina field show for you today as we are getting you ready for rivalry week. We're going to pick all of the rivalry games this weekend later on in the show. But now we bring in Chapel Fowler of the State newspaper, who is a good friend of the show. And Chapel, I want to start with a pretty viral tweet that you sent out today where you said Clemson coach Dabo Swinney says he knows what percentage of the Tigers' $20.5 million revenue sharing with athletes is going to the football team. He doesn't reveal it, but he offers this: ain't nobody going to have more money than Clemson for the first time ever. Chapel, for those that have not heard this news yet about the letter that was sent out from Graham Neff, can you fill us in? And welcome into the show as always, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be considered a friend of the program now. That's a nice little designation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, a newsy day in Clemson today, and not just because of the Palmetto Bowl game coming up. Essentially, now this has been swirling for a while, and every school is prepping for it, but we're getting closer and closer to that date next summer where this NCAA versus House settlement is going to go into effect and kind of usher in a direct revenue sharing agreement where colleges are going to be able to pay their players. I think it comes out to 22% of their combined media, tickets, and all this stuff sale. The number is essentially going to be $20.5 million at maximum per school. And kind of what Clemson announced this morning and what Graham Neff detailed and what Dabo Swinney is really excited about is that Clemson Athletics is kind of committed to paying out that maximum of $20.5 million to all their programs and obviously the athletes within them. And within that $20.5 million, we're talking a very significant chunk going to the football program directly. I think kind of the recommended settlement back pay stuff, like for the previous athletes, is something like a 75-15, 5-5 split, with that 75% going to former football athletes. A lot of programs and schools are kind of use that model going forward. And based on kind of what I've heard, what others have reported, what Dabo's intimated to us today is that Clemson football is probably going to be getting even more than 75% of that share to kind of distribute among 6 players. I mean, 75% of 20 whatever million is something in the 15 million range. Go above that, you're getting into 16, 17. That's a nice chunk of change. Obviously, NIL can go on top of that, and that'll vary by school. But what he was saying there, and he was very specific in how he said it. He corrected somebody on it, which he doesn't do often. His quote wasn't that Clemson is going to have more money than everybody else, but that nobody else will be able to have more money than Clemson, just in the fact that on this baseline $20.5 million that's going to be distributed by every school, Clemson's going to be way up near the top nationally in terms of what percentage of that is going to go to its football program specifically. And obviously that's a pretty big deal at a program that's had its struggles and its own viral issues with kind of NIL and pay for play and what they're going to do and not do.
Chapel Fowler of the State newspaper joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryce. And Chapel, do you believe that because of this, and a lot of people have bemoaned the possibility that some of the smaller programs in college football, the less financially fortunate programs in college football, are going to start finding it very, very difficult to pay a large percentage of their revenues to student athletes? Just extrapolating this down the line, do you think maybe we'll see the smaller schools requesting or demanding larger payouts for the bye games? For example, the FCS. I mean, I remember when FCS games cost teams $250,000 to play an FCS team, and now that's pushing $750,000 now. G5 games are costing $1 million, $1.5 million a pop. Do you consider that that's going to start increasing, and some maybe some tertiary expenditures will go up as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everything is just rising costs nowadays. Like when you think about that $20.5 million number, that's not like what maybe every single school is going to offer. That's the maximum to which you can pay out to your athletes, but you don't have to hit 20.5 if you're in a spot where you can't dish out that much, which I would certainly understand if some schools aren't, then you're not going to do that. But yeah, it all trickles down with this NIL stuff too, kind of this NIL clearinghouse. I think one of the things I'm interested in is, what are they going to determine as fair market value? What does that really look like? Obviously there's legal implications there where you don't want to feel like you're limiting people from earning what they're worth, but, how does that kind of fit into the equation? And, let's say if a football program has been promised 75% of its schools revenue sharing payout, so that's split, I don't know, $15 million of the $20 million. Like, how much more are you kind of operating with year to year on top of that when it comes to NIL? What does that operating budget for acquisition and retention look like? Because that's kind of more of the truer number of what a lot of these teams are going to be working with. So yeah, it's another big step in what feels like there's a big step every 2 or 3 months in college sports. I think Dabo Swinney, at least from what he told us, is very much a fan of this setup, kind of the regulation that comes with it, this kind of standardized, almost like a cap, NFL salary cap of sorts, that kind of keeps stuff a little bit more in line. This idea of the NIL clearinghouse, Clemson's going to be retaining a sports marketing agency to kind of help them, sort through NIL deals. There was all that stuff over the summer about the state of South Carolina passing a law to where South Carolina and Clemson could kind of work with their athletes more directly and avoid bad actors, bad contracts, bad agents, all that stuff. I think Dabo's quote today was that we are through everything except for the back 20% of all the insanity. Like, we're through 80% of the insanity was kind of his quip about how everything's gone over the last few years. But I'm certainly excited to see kind of how this all plays out. I think on its face, it certainly makes sense. And, paying athletes, I'm always going to be for that. So hopefully this kind of settles things down for everybody, not just Clemson or South Carolina, but everybody involved.
Chapel, with all that being said, in your opinion, how does that impact the way Dabo will recruit and use the portal actively?
Yeah, I think, he's already been telling people in conversations, these are like 2025 recruits, about what's ahead. Like, he's telling them about how Clemson is going to have a significant amount of its revenue sharing money for athletes directly committed to the football program, and what that's going to look like. Obviously, it's going to be different for what a freshman is going to get versus a Cade Klubnik. He made a not so subtle joke today that, hey, if you're a 4th-year quarterback coming back for your 3rd year as a starter, I'd imagine you'll be pretty well off under this revenue sharing setup. So they're definitely going to reward the top guys in their program, and that's kind of what they're already doing. Clemson players do get paid through NIL deals, and some of the top ones on campus right now that have stayed, that despite kind of being dangled offers from other schools, are certainly getting paid what they're worth, but probably not to this level that this is going to usher in. So I think on a high school recruiting level, it's already, happening. I think the transfer portal part is really interesting just because, it feels like every year we're thinking, okay, is this going to be that Clemson really opens up and takes a few guys? Last year was really the most they've done in the portal, but what that amounted to was like offering some offensive linemen and then losing out to places like Georgia Tech and Ohio State because Clemson was not, like I said, willing to kind of dangle that money to players who haven't been in the program. How does this change that? I'm not totally sure. I think just given the on-the-field trajectory, kind of what they've done in the last few years, being close but not close enough, if they lose this South Carolina game, they're out of the playoff. They could win the South Carolina game and not make the ACC title game and still get left out of the playoff with a 10-2 record, depending on how they stack up with other people. Does one really good portal guy here or there change that, or give you one extra win instead of one extra loss and kind of flip your fortunes? I think it's at least a possibility. So I'm interested to see how much the portal stuff happens for them this year. I don't want to bet on it, but I'd imagine it's going to be at least like last year in terms of activity, if not a little bit higher. But what that means for Clemson is obviously different than what it means for a South Carolina or somebody else.
Chapel, you touched on it there for just a second. And in the letter that Graham Neff sent out to fans, he said, quote, "We're excited about the potential of regulated commercial name, image, and likeness." You touched on the possibility for bad actors. Look, we had a salary cap at one point, and it was ostensibly zero, right? And we had a ton of bad actors, with the with the McDonald's bag with $1,000 cash in it, et cetera, et cetera. In your mind, and I understand this is still very much in its infancy, has anyone official mentioned anything with regards to how to essentially punish bad actors? Because if we're creating a cap of some sort, somebody will always try to circumvent the rules, right? And throw some extra money under the table. Do you foresee any potential of really going after the programs and the violators here?
I'm not sure. I mean, we all know how the current NCAA like penalty system works, where you get dinged for something and then it doesn't get decided until 4 years later and ends up just kind of hurting the people who are there probably when that coaching staff has already left or been fired and stuff like that. One thing specific to this idea of this $20.5 million cap that came up a lot in Dabo's presser today was that they're, retaining this sports marketing agency. I think it's ESM located out of Greenville. And like one of the big things for that group is going to be keeping Clemson like at that cap number and not going above it. Because as Dabo alluded to, that there's possibility of like fines if you go above the cap. So just on a very simple monetary basis on that, I think there's some level of enforcement. Like if you're going to say, hey, you can't have more than $20.5 million getting distributed, obviously you want to have some level of enforcement or like watchdog guarding of that to where people aren't just totally saying screw that rule and going above it. So I think in that very like fine print way, there's going to be stuff. But yeah, I think it's kind of TBD on how much people are going to get punished for circumventing this stuff. Because as we've seen over the last few years, not a lot of people are really getting busted for what a lot of people are doing. It's kind of just the way it is. And the few that have, it's been pretty minimal, like infractions and stuff. Because again, college sports has always been a business, like you mentioned with the under the table McDonald's bag type stuff. Now we're just kind of finally admitting it, which is refreshing. But I don't think that totally changes like kind of the underworld part of it. So I think that's kind of a lingering question mark and probably one that is not going to be totally solved by the system either.
Chapel, let's get to the football field on Saturday at noon. Look, a lot of anticipation for this one, maybe more anticipation than we've seen in a very long time. You've been covering this Clemson team all year and very closely. What is your lean as of this Tuesday afternoon on what fans should expect to see Saturday? Obviously, you don't have to give us a pick because I'm sure you'll do that in an article on your site later in the week. But what is your lean as of today at 3:40?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my lean more than anything else is instant classic. Like it's just really cool for the state of South Carolina, for the region, for both programs to have this game of this magnitude. I mean, I feel like in the grand scheme of things, it's easy to say this locally, but I do feel like Clemson, South Carolina football as a rivalry is maybe a little underrated nationally, just in terms of how fierce and long running and popular and influential and how much it impacts everything in the state, everybody in the state all year. I'm a North Carolina native, so you compare that to UNC, NC State football. Like Clemson, South Carolina is drastically more important and impactful than that. No question about it. So I think just the fact that it is such a national game, CFP implications, that the stakes are going to make it fun no matter what. On the field itself, outside of all that, I really do think South Carolina is playing better ball than Clemson right now. I think you look at some of their last, take out the Wofford and the Citadel games from last week and look at their most recent games against Power 5 competition, kind of what they're doing, how they're playing. This is a Clemson offense that had 51 against the Citadel last week, but that's kind of to be expected. They hadn't crossed, I think it was 24 points in any of their past 3 games before that against Louisville, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech. So it's getting back a little bit to that 2023 stretch of time when they were putting up all these yards, but they weren't scoring, like this kind of empty calorie stuff because of, turnovers or execution, a missed block here, a drop there. So this is the Clemson offense that has kind of taken a step down from that high flying 40, 50, 60 a game level that it was at earlier in the season against some weaker competition. So I don't think that group isn't totally firing on every single cylinder. And then at the same time, you got a Clemson defense that just allowed almost 300 rushing yards to an FCS team. So I think you combine those two things with what South Carolina has done in these past few weeks against a lot of ranked teams, on the road against SEC teams, coming back against Missouri, beating Oklahoma, all that stuff. I'm leaning Gamecocks right now just because I think their body of work, like as of recent, has been more impressive, at least from what I've seen week to week, looking at Clemson from the press box.
He writes for the state newspaper, Chapel Fowler, right here on the Fan Upstate with Cole Bryson and Diesel. Chapel, I want to touch one more time before we move off of it on this Graham Neff letter to fans. Can you tell us about this 150 new scholarships added across all sports? Do you think that means Clemson's going to grow some sports and add, you look at God, you look at some West Coast schools, UCLA, USC, for example, they've got so many more sports than Clemson sponsors. So are you looking at potentially adding sports here, or is it just fully funding more scholarships to the sports they already have?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter, more fully funding a lot of the sports they already have. I've been so into the football side of it today, I think for obvious reasons, because that's like the one that this affects most. I haven't looked into that part as much, but I think, Neff is on the record earlier this year as saying that they don't want to, or they don't anticipate cutting any sports from what they have right now, which I think is 21 varsity offerings. It's like 10 men, 11 women, something like that, the split. So, it's going to really positively affect a sport like baseball, where what were they working with, like 11.7 or something like that, not even enough partial scholarships for a third of the team if you were to distribute them in full. So a sport like baseball, soccer, lacrosse, I think all that is kind of where you're going to see that growth, adding that 150. And that's another really good part of this House settlement, is just kind of what it's doing and what it's allowing schools to do for some of these quote unquote non-revenue sports that are obviously still full of athletes who are awesome and work very hard and deserve to be compensated and get scholarships and all that stuff. So, I'm sure Eric Backage is like going crazy right now once he heard about what all this was going to be with like baseball scholarships and how much that's going to change. And Clemson has 2 really good soccer programs, and golf, and just across the board, some really solid teams that I'm sure are feeling really good about this stuff. So yeah, obviously all the focus is, as it should be, just because football kind of drives everything nationally, and especially at Clemson with realignment and everything in college sports. That kind of is the focus and the business side of it. But if you look at what this House settlement does for all these other smaller schools, smaller programs, and just kind of the scholarship increase and what that can mean for an individual kid or family or program, that's pretty cool and certainly well deserved. So I was glad to see that that's kind of happening all across the country. More people getting paid fairly for their work is always going to be a good thing in my book.
Chapel, 20 seconds or less. Today's show question: your most hated Thanksgiving side, cranberry sauce, deviled eggs, green bean casserole, or other?
Anything with like beets, I just can't really get into. Pickled beets, all that stuff. I'll really mix about anything else in on the plate. But for some reason, I've never been a beets guy. I'm all for cranberry and stuffing, but something about a beet, I just can't do it.
Chapel, I think the Pilgrims only ate beets because that's all they had, and they didn't know any better.
That's right.
I get it.
Hey, great stuff, Chapel, as always. We appreciate you hopping on with us.
Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too, man. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Chapel Fowler, the state newspaper diesel, really good stuff, man.
When we come back, Cole, Mac Brown is out as UNC head football coach. So who should they go get? Who might they actually be able to get? That conversation is next.
And connect with Diesel and
Ding dong, Mac is gone.
Oh,
It's amazing how fast things can change, right? Just 24 hours ago, we heard from Mac Brown when he said, I intend to return to North Carolina next year. And we were both like, why?
and we talked about it
Why?
yesterday.
Well, that's officially donezo. Bubba Cunningham, athletic director at UNC, has put the kibosh on that. Mac is gone. He will not return for the 2025 season, Cole. So the question is, what kind of coach should North Carolina be going after? Because, Cole, they don't have a ton of history of success in that football program. Carl Torbush, losing record. John Bunting, losing record. Butch Davis, losing record. Everett Withers, he was only there for one season, but he went 7-6. Larry Fedora, 2 games over 500. Mac Brown has been the only coach that's won a damn thing at North Carolina in a long time. Yeah. I understand that UNC Tar Heel fans are just waiting around for basketball season, but they want to win at football. So who should they go get?
Well, it's a better job than people give it credit for. That's my whole thing.
Well, the ACC is weak. You could come in and run that conference if you got the right coach.
It's not a bad job. I said yesterday, and I did not think, Diesel, that we would be talking about it again 24 hours later, but I said that North Carolina should offer Gene Chizik, and whatever he wants to make, pay him. Mm-hmm. Is he a A++ hire? No, but for North Carolina to have a guy like Gene Chizik who knows the game, who's been at the mountaintop of college football, I think that'd be a really good hire. You're not getting an Urban Meyer. You're not getting somebody of that quality, but why not go after Gene Chizik?
So I'm going to throw 3 names at you, Cole. One of them, the first one, is the most far-fetched of the bunch, but I genuinely think these are 3 solid options for North Carolina. Number 1, Chip Kelly, if LSU fires him.
Yep.
Chip Kelly.
I don't hate that.
Look, Chip Kelly is a prickly jerk. Most North Carolina fans that I've ever met are prickly jerks, nose in the air kind of people.
Yeah.
So I think Chip Kelly would fit in really, really well there. Number 2, Cole, and this is the least expensive but very good option, John Summerall, who was at Troy and Tulane. He's 32-6 as a head coach. He'd be one of those guys that you can get for less and maybe keep him around for 4 or 5 years. But then again, if he finds a success at North Carolina, he may be hired away by another program. And lastly, Cole, does Dan Mullen want to get back into football? Does Dan want to get back into coaching? I think Dan Mullen would be a great option for North Carolina. The dude won at Mississippi State, and North Carolina is way better off than Mississippi State is. Oh, and I'm going to throw one more at you. Jamie Chadwell. Come on, you telling me that he couldn't schmooze his way? He couldn't use car salesman his way into the right circles in Chapel Hill, North Carolina?
No, I like that. I think that'd be a good hire. I just do think that Dan Mullen, though, I think he has that itch. I think he I think he wants to get back in. Look, Dan Mullen went at Florida. They fired him for a bad reason.
And you don't have a tremendous amount of pressure on you as the head coach at North Carolina. He's dealt with the pressure cooker of Florida. I guarantee you he doesn't want to go back to that again.
Upset picks, Diesel. 7 minutes from now, a day early because of Thanksgiving. They're open. Tolos, get ready. 7 minutes from now, we're coming to you for your upset picks. That's next. Get ready, Diesel. Crank your energy drink up. Let's crack that Red Bull or Monster open and get rolling with the Upset Picks Challenge. Here, go ahead. I'll give you the louder. What's the name of that?
Y'all ready for this?
Yeah. Yep, that's it. That's a lot better than the intro we have. We should just do that every hour. That'd be a lot better.
Can we?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think upper management will care at all.
Look for my next CD. Diesel hums the hits.
I like it. I like it a lot. Upset picks are open. You, Tolos.
In.
Are they already?
Yeah.
I can see that they're flooding in by Diesel doing this.
Copy, paste.
He's pasting feverishly. And I absolutely love it because Thanksgiving, I'm going to be off tomorrow throughout the rest of the week. Today's my last day. Diesel's with you tomorrow. But upset picks are open today, right now. You can get your upset picks in 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We need your name, the game, and the spread. If you have not joined yet, guess what? It's not too late. I know the season is winding down, but it is not too late to join the Upset Picks Challenge. We would love to have you in the game, in the challenge this week. And it's all brought to you by
Ingles Markets,
where you get low prices and love the savings. We love our friends at Ingles, and they are sponsoring this year's Upset Picks Challenge. As Diesel said, they're rolling in already.
Yeah.
The only bad thing is, though, they might stop rolling in because I don't have a freaking clue. Do you? Do you have a clue?
I think I know which one I'm going to go with, Cole. I think I know.
I think it's better than I have no clue.
I think I've narrowed it down to two, Cole, that I'm very, very interested in. By the way, Tolos, you can hit up the Fan Upstate Twitter account at the Fan Upstate, and we have the latest challenge standings posted for you right there. We had to do a little update because we missed one. We made exactly one mistake last week in the Upset Picks Challenge. We missed one pick, and it was a big one. It was an important pick. Okay, so we had to go back and make that correction. So here's where we are, Cole. Twisted Whisker leading the pack with 72 points. 72 points this week. Noel is in second place with 70. John Dog has 56.5. He's in third. Jake Crane from Crane & Company is in fourth place with 50.5 points. T-Ray has 48.5. He's in fifth place.
That is very, very impressive. I'm nowhere to be found.
Well,
I'm at 70th.
And I'm glad you brought up the point earlier about getting into the challenge and not falling off just because you don't feel like you have a chance to do well in this challenge, because we had a Tolo, I believe it was Buckeye Brian, who jumped from 90th place into the 20s because of one pick that he made this past week. So it is very possible. All you got to do is kind of get lucky. I mean, let's be real. There's a lot of luck. There's a lot of luck involved in this, and there's some skill. I mean, there is some skill involved, and it's skill that Dan B has gone 13 weeks and hasn't picked a single correct pick all season long.
Dan, you're in my thoughts and prayers, man.
I can say that because he's in the air right now, flying.
Oh,
he's not listening. No, he can't hear us right now.
He's up in the sky.
He might go back and find it in the podcast later, but he can't hear this.
He cannot hear it unless they have new technology in the planes. Diesel
radios
that I know we're on the Odyssey app, but I don't know if you can pick up the Odyssey app up in the sky.
Could you imagine Dan B flying and he's in his plane, he's in his cockpit, but he's got that phone holder just suction cupped to the windshield, and he's rocking out with us
wire to wire. That's the true definition of Tolo. Turn on, leave on. There are actually Tolos. There are two games tonight. Normally, Tuesday night games are not on the board. However, since the challenge opens today, it opened 5 minutes ago if you just tuned in, Diesel, two games tonight that are on the board and pretty big point spreads. Toledo and Akron tonight at 7 o'clock. Toledo's favored by 9 points. And then also at 7, the 0-11 Kent State, what did we say? Golden
Flash.
They need to change their mascot. Maybe they'll win a game. Kent State's 0-11.
Man, if only they were in New Orleans, they could be the Flash.
Yeah, literally the Flash.
Yeah.
They're playing Buffalo. Buffalo's favored by 23.5. Obviously a big spread, but that's just not happening. That's not going to happen tonight. So as much as I'd love to pick that one, I do not see that one happening at all. A lot of text coming in, though, 71307. I believe Tolo Keith was the first one to get in his upset pick today. He took Michigan over Ohio State 20.5. Coach AJ took Syracuse over Miami -11. I like this, Diesel. Mason Bruce says, I don't love it, but I have to do it. Michigan +21 over Ohio State. Tolo Steve wants Memphis +14.5 over Tulane. Happy Thanksgiving, guys, says Tolo Steve. Back to you on that, Tolo Steve. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Palmetto Buckeyes, Syracuse over Miami, 11 points. And CJ from Greer. I'll stop there and we'll continue the text. And by the way, just because we don't read your text doesn't mean we didn't get it. But CJ from Greer wants Memphis +14.5 over Tulane.
We try to read every single one of them that we can get to. Doesn't mean we can get to every single one. So again, we use the spreads on ESPN.com. Go to ESPN.com, just search for the college football scores page, and you can go conference by conference. You can look at top 25. You can look at all games, whatever you want to do. And you don't have to pick a Power 5 game. Right? You don't have to pick an SEC game or an ACC game. You can pick a MAC game if you want to. Just pick a game where you think the betting underdog will win the game outright, and then text it to us at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan and give us your name, your game, and the spread.
You can also call in with your upset pick, 844-FAN phone, as Billy Horn wants to do. Billy, do you have a $1 million ticket to the chocolate factory of an upset pick this week?
I got a golden ticket.
I would hope so. Last week, Stanford let me down in the fourth quarter. But this week, we want to go Memphis +14.5.
Ooh.
Okay, over Tulane.
Over Tulane.
I like it, Billy.
Is that the game you were talking about
I like
earlier?
it so much that I'm going to reveal it right now that is my pick as well.
No.
I'm taking Billy, you're a smart guy, so I'm going to roll with you tonight.
Well, I screwed up 2 weeks ago. I rolled with Cole there, and I got big time.
Sorry, Billy.
I might roll it with Diesel this week.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Billy. Cole, you are a snake bit.
I am bad, man.
In this challenge. I also looked at Texas A&M upsetting Texas because A&M lost that game when you got into the weird, wacky overtime rules. Right?
Good.
On a drop pass that should have continued that game. He just dropped it.
Y'all's game's a Thanksgiving night game, by the way.
Yes, it is. I think it's the only game
one
on Thanksgiving night. I can't figure out why this game is a 14.5 point spread. I mean, they're both 9-2 teams. Both of Tulane's losses are to Power 4 teams. Memphis has lost to a couple of G5s in their own conference, so I get that. Memphis is a little all over the place offensively and defensively. Cole, that might be kind of what they're looking at, is that they are inconsistent, and that Tulane has played monster defense the last 3 weeks in a row, Cole. They've given up a combined 9 points in the last 3 games.
You know what I'm looking at?
It's absurd how good their defense is.
You're not going to like this, but I haven't.
Don't you take it.
No.
Don't jinx it, Cole.
Which one?
Don't take the same game.
No. I hadn't done that all year. I just for the sake of parity, I have not done that. I'm looking at Oregon State, Boise State, Black Friday.
You think they might stub their toe at the last minute?
19 points. We've
turf
seen chaos. We've seen chaos, right?
The turf monster could get them.
I mean, Genty's like the best player, one of the best players in college football. So I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm not going to lock in with that one. But there are some. Also looked at Oklahoma State over Colorado. I mean, I don't think they're going to trip up twice, 2 weeks in a row. Whoever Kansas is playing, right? That's who we need to pick because they've beaten 3 ranked opponents in a row, Diesel. They could beat Alabama if they played this weekend. Let me find Kansas. Kansas is playing Baylor, and Kansas is favored.
There's a couple of these games that, like, rivalry week just sucks for some teams. Like, you don't have an in-state, in-conference rival. I think they got to start crossing these lines a little bit more late in the season because, I mean, Baylor, Kansas, nobody cares. You're not going to get people to tune in and watch that.
No, it's not. It's not a good game. It's really not. I'm telling you, man, I'm absolutely struggling. I'm trying my best. I mean, I have to pick a big one. I have to pick a 20-plus point game here. And I've looked at several, but I'm going to give you my pick. I'm ready. Let me double check here. Let me check behind one more closed door. Let me open that door. Nothing there. Okay, let me check this door. All right, I've got my pick. I am going I hate to do this. Diesel, I'm going to go with Maryland upsetting Penn State on Saturday.
Ooh.
Huge chaos. 25-point spread.
Ooh.
25. Let's go Terps. Everybody.
The
Let's
Twerps
go
are not
Terps.
beating Penn State.
Let's
The Twerps
go Terps.
Got a lot more to catch up on for you here, Cole. I think you left off at CJ from
yes.
Greer.
Yes.
Boomer Bill takes Texas A&M over Texas +6. JB wants Syracuse over Miami for 11 points. Leprechaun of Lyman says he wants Purdue over Indiana +29.5. He is swinging for the fences, Leprechaun of Lyman. JD's taking Vandy over Tennessee +10.5 points. You happy, JD? We read your text on the air. Akron over Toledo for 9, says Jeff R. Matt M. from Gaffney wants Georgia Tech +19.5 over Georgia. Clemson Oculus wants Syracuse over Miami for 11 points. Keith and TR is taking Mississippi State +26 over Ole Miss. Billy Horn and myself both going Memphis +14.5 against Tulane. And Cole, yours just came in at Maryland +25.
Oh, Maryland +25. I'm telling you, that's ballsy. That is ballsy. But I'm telling you, man, I've seen some. I was looking at Jeff R. Akron over Toledo. Was it you talking about that game earlier?
No, I mean, I talked a lot of trash about Akron yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that might be where the thoughts coming into your brain. We were talking about them in the strength of schedule for Carolina.
Texter says, why wouldn't you be able to get Odyssey app on an airplane? Airplanes have Wi-Fi. Odyssey app will work on Wi-Fi. I mean,
he is busy flying the plane. So he's kind of busy.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I said, I don't know if you can get it. Can you? I guess that's right.
I bet you're shocked. I bet you'd be shocked at what's actually inside the cockpit of an airplane. Like they got more amenities in there than we know about.
Think so?
Cushy, like Lazy Boys or something.
What's the movie where I've seen a lot of the
Airplane?
No, where the guy. Oh God, I'm so bad with actors' names. You'll know. The guy, the pilot's drunk and he has to admit to drinking and he.
Oh, it's the Denzel Washington movie,
Denzel.
right? Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
I've seen it.
You've watched the movie?
I've seen the movie. Captain, what is the name of that movie?
Flight.
Oh, that was way off. Captain Flight.
Captain Flight.
Wow.
I have this bad trend. Like TikTok's great, but TikTok's also terrible because it'll show you like 2 to 3 minute clips of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this Flight on TikTok all the time. It looks good. I just had never watched it. Texter says, have you guys made a prediction for Clemson, South Carolina? Texter, great question. 6:00 tonight on the show. I won't be here anymore this week. I will give my final thoughts. Yes, I'll make a prediction tonight before I leave you. 6:00.
I don't like using the word tonight to refer to 6:00.
You don't?
We hate this daylight savings time.
Well, it's true though.
It sucks.
It's tonight.
The sun's going to be down in like 20 minutes, and we have these snazzy new photos that have clung to the outside of the windows here of the Fan Upstate Studios.
Yeah,
and that darkens it even more, Cole. And I don't like it, man. It feels like we're trapped. Tom says, Diesel, tweet me back. What are you talking about,
Did you not tweet him back?
Tom, what are you talking about?
While you find that, Jay Waller from Anderson says, please give me Vanderbilt +10.5 over Tennessee, hoping for some home field advantage. Hard Knocks wants Kent State +23.5 over Buffalo. Scotty Mack says Utah +9.5 over UCF. You find Tom's tweet?
No. The only tweet I have from Tom, or tweet or text.
He said tweet. In all caps, by the way.
Let me go see if I have a tweet from Tom. I have a tweet from Cocky for a Reason. I have a tweet from Jimmy. I don't know if it's your cousin Jimmy. I don't have a tweet from you, Tom. What are you talking about?
No,
I don't think Tom and Cocky for a Reason are two different people, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
They're two different people. Tom, are you drunk already? What are you talking about?
But I think Tom's Twitter does have something with Cox in it. Gamecocks.
Does it?
Hey. Mind out of the Gamecocks.
Texter here. Okay, I've got a question for this texter who says, I like the Maryland over Penn State pick. Franklin's going to Franklin. That's not your upset pick. That is not. Okay, I was confused there for a second. That's not your upset
Who's
pick.
that? Mine?
They didn't say.
They're talking about mine.
Yeah, they're talking about your pick.
They like it.
But I don't know who this is that texted it.
They like it. They're with me. Let's go. I'm telling you, Diesel, there's been so much chaos. Can you imagine? I mean, I guess Maryland over Penn State wouldn't be as bad as an IU over Notre Dame, would it? But that'd still be – Maryland's terrible. Like, they're terrible, terrible. I think they've won one game all year.
I think it's time for Maryland. You know what? I was going to say time for Maryland to come back to the ACC. They don't want them. They can't take any more bottom feeder awful programs. They just can't.
You know what? They weren't this bad in the ACC.
No, they weren't,
good
because the
God.
ACC is not as good as the Big Ten.
Unbelievable. All right, let's go to the phones. 844-326-3663. Rick in Greer, what is up?
Who is this guy that just pushing the Gamecocks? That Tom?
Yeah.
He gets on my nerves, okay? Not many people get on my nerves, but he gets on my nerves. Listen, Tom, Tigers will win by touchdown. Shut up.
Rick, Tom was the one. I don't know if you heard it last week. I think it was toward the end of the week, Diesel. Tom challenged you to a 1-versus-1 Tolo versus Tolo.
I would love that because this guy's got a big mouth. He thinks before he speaks. I know that I talk some, crazy crap, but I think before I speak. He's an idiot. You're stupid. Okay.
So, Rick, real quick before we let you go, because today's my last day on the air. What is you, Tiger Rick, big Tiger fan? What's your prediction Saturday, man?
27-20 Tigers. It'll be a 7-point game, I think.
27-20.
Lenore Sellers, is that his name? The guy that's quarterback in Carolina. He'll play about a half and get hurt. He's been hurt, 3-4 times this year. Listen, Clemson Tigers, put a hit on it. Okay, he'll go down like a little toy train. So that's my prediction.
Rick, can you give us your upset pick while we got you on the line here?
Who is Alabama playing this week?
Alabama's playing Auburn this weekend, right? Iron Bowl.
I'll take Auburn over Alabama.
You'd be taking Auburn. Let me see what the spread is on that game.
11.5.
11.5.
I have 0 points, so it ain't gonna help or hurt me anyway.
No. If you hit on this, it'd be a big hit.
You'd have more points than Cole because Cole's not going to hit this week.
Who is Cole guy?
I took Maryland over Penn State -25.
What were you smoking before the program?
Rick, can't tell you that, Rick. That'd violate FCC.
Yeah, you must have been had a little Coke can or something going on because there's no way they're going to beat Penn State.
All right. Thanks for the call, Rick, as always.
Appreciate you, Rick.
844-326-3663. All right. So Rick has accepted the challenge of Tolo versus Tolo from Tom. Boy, that's Is that going to be bigger than Tyson versus Paul?
I mean, it's going to be less set up.
And better, probably.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
More competitive?
Yeah. Hey, Tolos, keep sending in your upset picks. Send us your name, your game, and the spread. Let's get to this phone call real quick before we go off. But coming up in the next segment, I want to give you a chance to win some concert tickets. Cole, who we got online?
Kevin wants to chime in. Kevin, what's up, man?
What up, fellas?
Kevin.
Man, it's Turkey Week, fellas.
Yes.
It is.
It is Turkey Week, man. But like, you frying one? You smoking one? What you doing to it?
I'm frying 2 Thursday.
I've had a fried turkey already, 2 baked turkeys in the oven, and my dad's going to smoke his turkey.
I love it, man. But I tell you what, you can have all the food on Thanksgiving, right? Just give me about 2 days afterwards, and just slice me up some ham. Let me make some sandwiches. I'm good to go.
Hey, Kev, can I ask you for some trivia real quick? How many counties in South Carolina, that you brought up Turkey Day, how many counties have more turkeys in their county than people?
Well, if you count just the jive turkeys that hang out in the county anyway, it's a whole lot more than regular turkeys.
According to 19 News, 10 counties in South Carolina have more of a turkey population than people. Now, again, that's 19 news. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. Cherokee, Newberry, Chester, Fairfield, Lancaster, Kershaw, Lee, Sumter, Darlington, and Chesterfield allegedly have more turkeys than people.
I kind of believe that because, if you stop at the store, just your regular convenience store down that way, you can find out everything that's got to go on in the little city down there. Like, you got the fire department, ambulance, and police department all at the convenience store, like right beside it. So, you like, if you ever been down towards Dixie, listen, man, let somebody know where you're going because you might get down there and turn on a dirt road and you might not ever be seen.
Let somebody
turn
know
on
where
those
you're
location
going.
services,
Yeah.
Kevin. Kevin, have you got an upset pick for us?
Hey, man. South Carolina, 43, Clemson, 28.
So you taking South Carolina for the win. They're plus 2.5 points.
I am.
I like it.
All right.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, we're changing directions on you here just a little bit. I understand, Tollers. We're asking a lot, asking you to text 2 different things in, but got a chance right now for you to win tickets to go see Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It's a great, great Christmas show and a tradition that they are here in Greenville every single year. And if you want to win 2 tickets to Trans-Siberian Orchestra coming up on Friday, December 13th through the very next segment, text the word orchestra to 71307. Start your text with the word fan and the word orchestra for your chance to win a pair of tickets to TSO Friday, December 13th at Bon Secours Wellness Arena. When we come back, Cole, here's when it gets fun. We're going to draft, you and I, each unit on the Clemson and South Carolina football teams. Which unit we think is the best. We're essentially creating a Palmetto all-star team going unit by unit with Clemson and South Carolina. That's coming up next. A lot of you Tolos texting in the word orchestra to 71307. Start your text with keyword fan, and you could win 2 tickets to go see Trans-Siberian Orchestra coming up on December 13th. You know they started as a metal band?
No.
Yeah, they started as like a kind of obscure dark metal band.
I think that's the only song I know.
Sabotage.
The one that I just was humming.
Wizards of Winter.
Is that it?
Yeah. The
No.
shreddy guitar solo.
Is that the one I'm singing?
I think so.
You know that one?
Yeah, that one. The song. That one. I know that one.
I don't know what it's
Jay
called.
Waller, you're not the winner yet. You may be the winner. We got a lot of texts coming in for those tickets. Got a lot of upset picks still coming in as well. P1 Panther Boy says he wants Texas A&M +6 over Texas. We got, we got text coming in from a whole bunch of Tolos. So keep them coming. 71307. Your upset picks. Give me your name, your game, and the spread.
Hey, real quick, they're not a local. Like, they didn't start out local.
No. They're
so they just
international.
They travel.
Worldwide.
But how do we get them here in Greenville then?
Because they sell a lot of tickets every year. Greenville shows out.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever been to a TSO show that wasn't packed to the gills.
I've never been.
Never
been.
Dude,
No.
you got to put in a request for these tickets.
Yeah, I'll take
It's
some
a blast, man.
Hey, Roy, if you're listening, that's Carol the Bells the one I'm thinking about.
Oh, Carol of the Bells. That's not even their song.
What do you mean it's not their song?
They didn't write that
I
song.
don't care if they wrote it. It's so good. Who wrote it?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, Carol the Bells. See, I think the one you were talking about, I'm not sure exactly which one it was.
Mine was Wizards of Winter.
That one. This is the one I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know this one.
So just so you know, I realize this is a sports station.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
But a lot of you guys have wives. Some of you have never spoken to a girl, and that's fine too. This may be your good excuse to ask a girl out. Trust me, take your wives to Trans-Siberian Orchestra. They will lose their minds. They will absolutely love it. They do like half of a Christmas story, like a whole set of songs, and then they break and they come back for a friggin' metal show. It's like being in an Iron Maiden show with pyro and lights.
Halftime.
It's absolutely incredible.
If you get an endorsement deal because of this nice background music, you better not forget about me.
Well, if we get sued for this background music, then it was all you. I didn't have anything to do with it. But if you want to win those tickets, text orchestra to 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. So, Cole, the idea on this segment is we're going to go unit by unit for both Clemson and South Carolina and draft unit by unit to build our best possible Palmetto All-Star team. So we're going to look at, we're going to break down offensive line, defensive line, receivers and tight ends, running backs, the secondary, special teams, quarterbacks, and yes, we're adding in the head coach to this because it matters, Cole.
No water boy?
No water boys here. So, Cole, do you want to go first or should I?
Doesn't matter.
First?
I'm just worried. What happens if we, and by the way, for those out there listening,
if we agree, we agree. And that's
on
fine.
all of them. What are the odds?
I don't know.
What are the odds we agreed on every single position group?
I want you to go with your gut feeling on this.
And by the way, we didn't look at each other's when we did this.
I got my notes separate, so he can't check them out.
Yep, I've got mine separate.
Okay, on the count of 3, offensive line, we're just gonna say Clemson or South Carolina.
Okay, I like it.
Offensive line, 1, 2, 3, Clemson. Okay.
Agree there.
Yeah, they got a good offensive line. They don't give up a ton of sacks.
South Carolina's is better than it was last year.
Yes.
But not to Clemson's yet.
Yes. South Carolina's given up a ton of sacks this year.
This is when healthy because Clemson's so banged up right now.
Yeah. Now, if we were looking at it through a right now this week going into this game,
it'd be different.
Who would we rather have? That might be a little bit more of a question. So we both said Clemson on offensive line. So we don't really have to argue that one out.
No, I'm with you. No.
Okay, let's go to the defensive line. How about that? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, South Carolina. God almighty. Really?
I'm telling you, you and I did this with the intention of not looking. And just because of that, we're going to agree on every one. I'm telling you, we're going to. No.
Tolos, if you want to disagree with us, we're fine to let that happen.
We're not going to agree on quarterback.
I don't think we are. But I like South Carolina's defensive line because you can't rush on them. You cannot run the football on South Carolina's defensive line.
They're elite. They're that good. I do think it's interesting, though, when you talk about this year's Clemson defense. I mean, we're not that far removed from Brent Venables, being the defensive coordinator and Clemson's defense being the storyline of their team. And, man, I talked about it after the Louisville loss. I think there's been a drop-off in depth defensively.
It's not fun to watch a team, Cole, that they have to go out there and score 35 points to have a chance to win a game. It's not fun. And Clemson is getting to that point. They got to square that away in seasons going forward. Cole, let's move over to the receivers and tight ends. I grouped these two groups together because tight ends most tight ends now are pass catching tight ends. So let's go on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. South Carolina.
No, you're wrong.
We're disagreeing on this one.
Yes, you're wrong. Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco Jr. Are you kidding me? Adam Randall, TJ Moore,
Mazio Bennett, Nick Harbor coming on.
Nick Harbor's caught like 2 touchdowns.
Josh Simon catching it from the tight end position.
Oh no, this was not
excellent.
Close.
Yeah, I think it's close.
No,
I think these two receiving cores are relatively close. But I give just that slight edge to South Carolina.
Oh, my gosh.
And look, I look at the way Nick Harbor's playing right now. He really has come on. They figured out how to use him. He's busting open into space, and most teams don't know how to defend him because they haven't used him very much over the course of the season.
I just like the options when healthy with Clemson's more than I do South. Mazio Bennett's not bad, but he's not Antonio Williams. He's not Bryant Wesco Jr., and I'm going to give the edge to the Tigers with that position group.
Okay, running backs. Who would you draft? We're drafting an all-star Palmetto team going position group by position group. Now we're going running backs. It's basically a Rocket versus Phil Maffa. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. South Carolina.
Yeah. I like that bowling ball physical back running back.
They got a lot of options with Rocket Sanders. I mean, he's shown himself over the past couple of weeks to be really good at catching the ball out of the backfield and then getting out into space with it. He moves well with the ball, especially once you're 3, 4, 5 seconds into the play. And that blocking scheme is really spreading guys out.
What's interesting is Phil Maffa, in my opinion, has elements of his game that are better than Rocket Sanders. But I think if you're looking at the totality of what they offer, I like that you can have Rocket Sanders as your down and distance back, but also be the 3rd and 2 back. I mean, he's so versatile, and man, when he's healthy, you saw him a couple of years ago not healthy, but when he's healthy, there are not many running backs that have the size and the power and the strength, diesel and the speed. He's an NFL back. To me, he is.
I like it. So we've agreed on, Cole, thus far, we've agreed on offensive line. Both of us said Clemson.
Correct.
We've agreed on defensive line. Both of us said South Carolina. We have disagreed on the receivers and tight ends position group. I said South Carolina. You said Clemson. We've agreed on the running back position. So, hey, that's 4 categories so far.
Yeah.
And we've agreed on 3 out of 4. We did not share notes before this started. Let's go to secondary on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. South Carolina. God, man, I didn't think that we were going to agree this much.
I thought we would have all of them in agreement so far.
Really?
But you threw me off on the receivers. So
really?
Thankfully, we have one to disagree with.
These two teams, as far as what the secondary is doing, slowing down pass catchers, both of them are basically identical. Both of them are giving up 11.5 yards per completion. Clemson has one more interception than South Carolina, but I think South Carolina just has more playmakers. I mean, Bam and Debo and Nick and Minwari and Jalua Solomon. I think they've got more playmakers there in the secondary.
I think O'Donnell Fortune's better than any Clemson player in the secondary right now. And again, that's not to discredit their secondary. You mentioned Nick and Minwari, and they've just got a deep group. And Shane Beamer talked a lot about their defensive line depth and rotation going into the season. But I think there's been a little bit of surprise with their depth and rotation at defensive backs as well and secondary. It's a strong position group for them, and it's a commanding unit. These are causing turnovers. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had one that could have gotten you in the playoffs in the LSU game by Nick and Minwari that got called back, and if that one play doesn't get called back, South Carolina is probably a top 10 team right now.
Cole, let's move over to special teams on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Clemson.
South Carolina.
Wow, you're going to South Carolina.
The big blow-ups on the left side of the offensive line with a field goal kicking this year for Clemson has got me concerned. They have not been able to shore that up. And again, you talk about South Carolina's front, and your left side of your offensive line giving up all these blocked field goals, I think that could be dangerous Saturday. I think South Carolina, Beamer ball, baby. That's what Beamer ball is.
I think, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here on my answer. The reason why I chose Clemson on this is because I don't trust Shane Beamer's decision-making when it comes to, he's made some questionable decisions. Let me rephrase it. Say he's made some questionable decisions. I'm thinking about that fake punt attempt against Ole Miss,
yeah.
when you were just in a horrible field position. And I know that's not necessarily the special teams player's fault. That's the position that the coach put them in. But when you're looking at punter as well, Cole, I mean, the difference is negligible. I mean, Aiden Swanson and Kai Kroger are 4 yards apart in the punting game average. So not a huge difference.
No, this one was
very tight.
It was tough.
It was very tight.
I just give the edge to the Gamecocks.
And here we go, Cole. The last 2 big categories, quarterbacks and head coach. On the count of 3, which quarterback would you draft if you were drafting a Palmetto All-Star team? On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, South Carolina.
Yeah, I knew we were gonna. I 100% without a shadow of a doubt knew we were gonna disagree because I changed my answer when I was doing this earlier in the office. I put South Carolina, but I do like when Cade's at his best. I think he's better. However, I don't think he's been put in those situations a lot this year. I'll go back to the Kentucky Bowl game last year, Diesel, when he was aggressive, almost an up-tempo style offense. At Wake Forest this season, when they were a lot more aggressive than they were earlier in the season. I think Cade at his best is an elite quarterback, but the problem is we have not seen him at his best a lot.
Well, I think Lenora Sellers can simply do more. I mean, I know Cade has shown a couple times that he can break free and go pick up a bunch of yards with his legs, but that's fewer and far between. That's not what he's asked to do, right? Lenora Sellers is a weapon with his feet, and he's serviceable enough, and he's improving in the pass game. He still makes some errant throws here and there, but guess what? So does Cade Klubnik. So does every quarterback in college football. I just like Lenora Sellers' suite of tools a little bit better. And hey, that's a decision that I'm making with a first-year starter versus a third-year starter.
No, and then experience is probably what put me over the top. But again, that was close, man. That was a close one.
And finally, Cole, we've gotten to the head coach question.
Oh boy!
And instead of saying Clemson and South Carolina, I just want you to say the first name of the coach that you're choosing. So whether it's Shane or Dabo, okay? On the count of 3, if you're drafting your head coach between these 2 teams to head up your all-star team, who you taking? 1, 2, 3, Shane.
Yeah.
God, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that we were gonna agree on that.
I thought we would because I've said it multiple times in the past month. Diesel Beamer is willing to do whatever it takes to win games, regardless of NIL and the portal. I love Dabo. I love Dabo Sweeney, but I want a coach that's willing to do whatever it takes to win football games.
You know what's funny is the NIL and portal didn't even occur to me when I was making this decision. What really made me go Shane Beamer was the way Dabo Sweeney handled the clock at the tail end of that Louisville game. Just no sense of urgency. No, hey guys, we got to go. We got to move. We got to get points. We got to get the ball back. And they just fiddle farted around. It's a word my dad used to use all the time. Fiddle farted around and screwed themselves when it came time to the opportunity in that biggest possible game. So, man, we agreed on most, not all. The differences were the quarterback position, special teams, and receivers.
Got time for Harold's phone call before we run to a break, though. 844-FAN phone. Harold, what is up, buddy?
Listen, on this upset picks, I need to know where they playing that Miami, Florida. Is Syracuse?
Miami is at Syracuse. In Syracuse, rather.
Okay, that's gonna make it because these 2. I want to see Auburn beat Alabama because that sure helps South Carolina.
It would help. Sure would.
So the Miami-Syracuse game is worth 11 points, Harold, if that's the one that you want. And
yeah, that would put me back at 30. I'm gonna go with Syracuse over Miami, Florida, because they're playing at Syracuse.
I like that pick. And I don't know, Diesel, have we? I don't think we've seen a ton of those come in.
I think we've got one.
Really?
Yeah, I think we've only got one, maybe two.
Harold, I like it a lot, man. Miami, like Diesel said, 11 points. I keep saying the Carrier Dome because that's what it used to be called.
Well, if I hit, it put me back at 30. I'm just trying to break the top 25 my first year doing this, And I mean, I passed on a winner last week again, Oregon State, and I took Army. And my goodness, listen, on this Clemson, Carolina, I'm gonna make it easy. I want one more point to Carolina, one more point, and they did it in '84, but if they hadn't got upset by Navy, they'd been playing for the national championship.
Do you like their chances, Harold?
Well, yes. I mean, barring any kind of injury or stuff like that, it's going head to head with what we got. I kind of favor South Carolina, but like I said, one more point. And listen, the two worst defeats in 50 years of Clemson beating Carolina was a 45-0. I forget who the coach was, and then
56.
Lou Holtz, 45-0. Danny Ford was Clemson, and Lou Holtz getting beat 62-17.
63-17, but 56-7 was bad too, Harold.
Okay, well, yeah, forget about that one. See, I must not have heard that one or something, but I've tried to catch them all because I was a truck driver in those days,
right?
On Saturday, so I might not have caught it.
Harold,
but anyway, listen, I like your pick, and listen, there was another one I was pondering. That was Ball State over Ohio. I don't know nothing about those teams.
I don't either.
But anyway.
Thanks for the call, man.
Thanks, Harold. That game might be tonight. That sounds like some Tuesday night match.
What's that?
The Ball State game? Is that tonight or is that over the weekend?
Ball State. No, I think the stage is too big for Ball State. No, that is not tonight.
Tolos, we're just about to pick a winner for these Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets. So if you texted in the word orchestra, stand by, because we're going to be calling you to get your information so that we can square everything away. So if you get a random phone call here in the next 3 minutes or so, it very well could be us. So you might want to answer that phone. I promise you, it's not a creditor. Okay. We're not
But you can give me your credit card if you want to. Daily Wire's next. Daily Wires. It's the buzz happening around the sports world. But first, congratulations to
Ethan Reed of Greenville,
winners of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra tickets.
Nice.
How about that? How about that? Zach asked, did I win the tickets yet? Sorry, Zach. Sorry, man. Try. Is there another opportunity?
There will be tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll have another chance tomorrow.
You can try again tomorrow, Tolos. All right. In a letter to fans, Clemson AD Graham Neff outlined some revenue-sharing plans last night, post-House settlement, including Clemson will add 150 scholarships across all sports, $20.5 million in revenue sharing, and Clemson will establish a front office to oversee athlete contracts. We talked to Chapel Fowler about that in the very first hour of the show. We'll replay that interview for you at 6:20 in case you missed it. North Carolina announced Tuesday that Mack Brown will not return next season, one day after the Hall of Fame coach declared his intentions to return. Bubba Cunningham, the AD, said, nah, we're good. Bye, Papa. We'll see you. Bye, Pops. We'll see you on the other side. Mack Brown, 73. We literally, Diesel, talked it into existence yesterday.
Mack ain't coming back.
Sorry, Mack. Hate to tell you, but you better go coach some high school football or just retire. That'd be the better option there. In Frisco, Texas, much of the discussion around Mike McCarthy during the Cowboys' struggles this season have been about the coach's in-season job security. However, this morning, Jerry Jones said on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, it's not crazy to think about extending Mike McCarthy. Los Angeles Rams wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. California Highway Patrol said Robinson, who was observed driving more than 100 miles an hour on 101 northbound, was arrested at 5:13 a.m. on Monday morning. This came after just hours after Diesel. He caught a touchdown, and the Rams lost to Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football. Did he go to Georgia by chance? Did he get these speeding lessons from Kirby Smart? Is that where he got them?
I mean, at some point, Cole, when are they going to start putting governors on college athletes' cars? You can drive a Lambo, but it'll only do 45 miles an hour.
Oh, God. I'd throw it run off a bridge. Are you kidding me? And then last but not least, Florida flipped four-star Florida State running back Byron Lewis on Tuesday morning. Sources told ESPN, securing the Gators' fourth 2025 commitment in the span of less than 24 hours and dealing the latest blow to the Seminoles' incoming class this fall. Diesel, Florida State, man, taking some hits.
I just wonder, Cole, what happens if Florida State somehow beats Florida on Saturday? Would he flip back to Florida State? I get that Florida is the hotter program right now. I get that. But, I mean, these kids change their decisions and change their minds like they change their underwear, right?
Yeah.
A new pair every day, hopefully. Yeah. You don't know for sure.
Do we have we might be able to, I hate we missed it. We might be able to squeeze our championship, our rivalry picks in next segment. You think we might have?
I think we should. Yeah. I think we should.
We didn't get to those, but we'll try.
So we're going to do what we always do at this time on Tuesdays, Cole. We're going to do a welfare check on a handful of coaches that we think might be in kind of a tricky spot.
Yeah.
That's coming up next. And we'll go against the spread for 11 big-time rivalry games this weekend and find out who's better at picking not just winners and losers, but against the spread. That's coming up next. Cole, each and every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, we take a look at who's on the hot seat.
Yep.
Who is in danger?
Danger
It's
zone.
our welfare check. Let's jump right into it, our welfare check. Why don't we? There we go. Don't be alarmed. It's not a real siren.
You're not getting pulled over,
You're not
Tolos.
getting pulled over. That's not what American police sirens even sound like. We had somebody text in one day and be like, you just got me scared that there was a cop behind me. Really? It was the siren and the trance bass beat behind it that got you scared. Anyway, Cole. Ryan Day, head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And instead of just saying, where is he right now? Where's Ryan Day if he loses to Michigan?
Oh, God.
In the rivalry game.
Don't even wish that.
On Saturday.
Oh, my God. It wouldn't be the Jim Harbaugh curse anymore. It'd just be, hey, he can't beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Now that Harbaugh's gone,
where is he now? And where will he be if he loses?
He's at 1 right now, or half a point. He's not even on the Richter scale.
You're not talking to the same Ohio State fans I am.
No, Ryan Day is one of the best coaches, if not the best. Now, if he loses to Michigan, I'm talking about a bad Michigan team, Diesel. It's going to be about a 5 or a 6. You cannot, and I repeat, cannot lose to Michigan if you're Ryan Day on Saturday, because that would be the biggest black eye you could ever have. I mean, this is not a good Michigan team. It's funny you asked that, because I didn't even think about that being an upset, but I think Ohio State's going to be okay on Saturday. I think
Ohio State's gonna win. Right now, sure. Ryan Day is sitting at a solid 5, and that's just because no. Listen to me. That's because Ohio State fans always put their head coach at a 5, no matter who it is, no matter how many times you've won.
That's so unfair.
Their coaches are always in a tough spot.
Oh boy!
But if he loses to Michigan again, Cole, he's like an 8. He's like an 8. They will run his ass out of town. Oof. And even Ryan Day himself here says, Cole, in this piece of audio, he talks about what it's like to lose to Michigan.
We felt what it's like to not win this game, and it's bad. It's one of the worst things that's happened to me in my life, quite honestly, other than losing my father and a few other things. Like it's quite honestly, for my family, the worst thing that's happened.
The day my dad died, the day somebody kicked my dog, and then losing to Michigan.
Are you kidding me? I mean, what a bold statement that was, Coach.
We just got a text from Buckeye Mike. He says Ryan Day would be an 11 if he loses this week. See? I'm telling you, Ohio State fans are nuts.
Mike, are you kidding me right now? Are you absolutely kidding me? There's no way. There's no way that. Yeah. But it's not going to happen. You're right.
All right. Not gonna happen. Let's move on to James Franklin, head coach, Penn State.
We're going to do the same thing here. If Maryland,
come on, it's Maryland. It's not a rivalry game.
James Franklin.
They'll be playing Pitt on rivalry weekend. What the hell are you doing, Penn State?
I think he's at 3.
3.
Yeah. I just don't know, like, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of pressure on him. And again, he wins enough games every year. And I guess Penn State, what we've learned, Diesel, is Penn State has become the most laid back, prop your feet up kind of job you can ever have, because there's no pressure. There's no pressure to win big games. You can have James Franklin as your coach and be above average and never be anything better than that. And they're okay with it, evidently. I think they should ask for more, though. I think they should want more than they have now with James Franklin. So, I say 3, 3.5, maybe 4 on a good day.
I agree. I mean, he's top 5 in the country right now, right? I mean, I know they were upset at the loss about the loss to Ohio State earlier this year. More upset probably about the way they played rather than simply just losing the game. But he's still top 5 in the country right now. So his seat is icy. Sharon Moore at Michigan, Cole. Ooh. It's not going well for his first year at Michigan. I understand it's his first year, but that doesn't stop fans from having opinions and thinking about things.
No, it doesn't. You know what? I mean, he was at Louisville. He was at Central Michigan. He's been under some good coaches, under Charlie Strong, and at Central Michigan, obviously had some experience there, but you said it. It's his first year, so you can't really knee-jerk react. I would say, though, Michigan, unlike Penn State, Michigan wants to be relevant. And with the money they have and with Dave Portnoy, I say he's at a 4. Is that too high? I'm going to go 4 for the first-year head ball coach.
I'm going to say it's a little cooler than that, but not by much.
Okay.
Not by much. Billy Napier at Florida. We've had him on the hot seat welfare check every single week.
Yeah.
He's 6-5 right now.
4.
Yeah.
I mean, what they've already said they're bringing him back.
It's coming down.
So next year's going to be a pivotal year, though,
Yeah.
right? If you crap your pants next year, you're probably going to be gone. But I do believe that there's a good chance he does okay. The schedule won't be as tough. There's no way it'll be as tough.
Okay, now what if he loses to Florida State?
Oh, you have to do what you did to Mac Brown. I mean, really. If he loses to Florida State, you've got to let him go.
One of the worst teams in college football this year.
That's bad.
Brent Venables at Oklahoma.
Boy,
Cole.
did that win help Saturday.
Yeah,
I mean,
it did.
the win over Alabama, right? Brent Venables was trending in a direction that we talked about last week on the welfare check. He was kind of at the point where, hey, Brent, you've got to start showing that you're headed in the right direction. You did. They won. They beat Bama. Granted, Bama's not the same Bama of the past. The Bama dynasty is in the past. But I'll go back down to 3 for Brent Venables after the Bama win.
I liked it. Yep. I like it. Look, Oklahoma got dealt a really, really tough hand. Had they been dealt the same schedule that Texas was dealt, I think we're probably talking about a 3-loss team. They're not elite by any means. They might be a 4-loss team at this point. I put them right there at like 3.5.
Yeah.
Right. And so Oklahoma fans would look at that and say, wow, this is really successful for our first year in the SEC. But they got dealt a really, really tough draw. Cole, let's move down right there to the team that they just beat, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Now, remember, guys, we're looking at this just from how fans feel, right? Not from what the administration would actually do, not from where they are in a contract situation. And look, we saw with Billy Napier, contracts don't matter in the SEC. Mm-hmm. If fans and donors want to throw the kind of money at somebody to get them out of there, they will. How is the fan base in Tuscaloosa?
Oh, gosh. You know what? Alabama has higher expectations than anybody, Diesel. They're Alabama, for crying out loud. I think he's realistically at a 2. I think he should be at a 4. They're not Bama anymore. They're not. They're vulnerable. The dynasty of Alabama is gone. It's over. If that breaks your heart, I'm sorry, but it's true. The dynasty of Alabama is now in the past. And DeBoer, is a good coach, but Diesel, they've looked way too vulnerable at times this year. They could very well be another 4-loss team to South Carolina, I think
he's at a 4, but he should be at a 2. So I'm going to flip-flop you. He should be at a 2. Look, this is his first year in a brand new conference. A lot has changed for Kalen DeBoer in the last 8 months. So, look, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean that Alabama fans are.
No, it doesn't.
Cole, Dabo Swinney. We'll do the Dabo Swinney bit if they win this week versus if they lose this week.
If they win, 1. If they lose, ooh.
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky.
God. If they lose Saturday, Dabo will be the 3.
That's it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, though.
That's it.
It shouldn't be.
Clemson fans, you need to up your standards a little bit.
Yeah, it should be
your standards.
Should be 4, but I'll say 1. But if they lose, 3.5.
Lastly, here, Cole, before we move on to our picks against the spread, Dave Dorn at NC State. Dave Dorn.
God, I've always been a Dave Doran fan, and he just hadn't.
Really? He's a jerk.
I know, but he's
a sour dude.
He is a jerk. He's a good football coach, though, and I've been a fan of his. I thought he would take NC State to a little bit higher of a place where they've been. I'll go 5. I just don't know that.
I think he ought to be more like a 6 or a 7.
So? Well, I can go on board with that.
Enough is enough, right? They fancy themselves a winning program.
Yeah.
And they've had opportunities. They felt going into seasons like they've got a really good team, and they've just fallen flat.
Yeah.
Year after year after year.
Sure.
We got a text here at 71307 from Keith in Travelers Rest. My grandpa is an Ohio State fan and would sell everything he owns to buy out Ryan Day if they lose to Michigan this week. Wow.
That
Keith and TR.
might be a little rough.
Hyperbolic? Probably not. Probably not. I
mean,
mean, look, you've seen the memes. Dudes can get by with just a lawn chair and a PlayStation.
It's true.
It'd be just fine.
Do we, before we move on to our picks, do we want a format breaker in the form of Tom and Somerville?
Tom, hit us. Tom, you got mad at me for not tweeting you back earlier, and you just tweeted at me and said, here.
Hey, sorry about that, Diesel. I'm still learning all this stuff. But earlier today, Mr. Rick had some words about Tom in Somerville. And, you know, Rick seems like a nice guy, seems like a down-to-earth guy. But let's be honest here. That all came from a man who said the Panthers were going to trade Bryce Young for Trevor Lawrence, which, remind you, that did not happen. So Rick has a history of making false allegations on your radio station. So just want to put that out there. He also said that the Tigers were going to win Saturday, which that's his opinion. However, I would love to know his reasoning as to why the Tigers are going to win on Saturday, because I do not see it. History doesn't win rivalry games. They don't. And yes, Clemson has the history in this rivalry. Who cares? It's 2024. And here's a little fact for all you Clemson fans out there. So, because, you know, a lot of Clemson fans don't live off facts. They live off of false opinions. So when it comes to facts, there has been 6 games in this rivalry's history where both teams have been ranked in the top 25. Do y'all know the record in those 6 games off your hand? Do you know the record?
No, I don't off the top of my head.
5-1 in South Carolina's favor. So, yeah, and most of those were under Spurrier, but still, the history in the rivalry shows, since Clemson fans like to bring that up, that when both teams are top 25 caliber, South Carolina dominates that game. So, Clemson fans, you know, you can.
But you just said you can't evaluate a game off of history, Tom.
I did. But every year, Clemson fans say, oh, we're going to win because look at the rivalry's record. And that's fine. If you want to do that, all I was saying is Rick is probably basing the opinion that they're going to win Saturday based off of them winning all them other years. So if you want to look at the history in this case, you got to look at the history that when both teams are ranked, South Carolina wins just about every time. And let's not forget the fact that South Carolina has played one of the toughest schedules in the country. Cole, we know all year you've been talking about how soft Clemson's schedule is, which it is. They've only beaten one bowl-eligible team all year. So, yes, Clemson is a good football team, but they're not battle-tested, and that is going to show on Saturday. South Carolina is going to lay the wood, and it is not going to be close, and it is going to be absolutely incredible watching Clemson fans complain, blame Dabo, blame NIL, blame the lack of the portal. It's going to be incredible.
Hey,
it's going to be Christmas in November.
Tom, 2 texts I want to read to you before we let you run. Fat Page says, history doesn't win rivalry games, and neither does South Carolina. Lefty Tiger says, nothing worse than getting in the car after a crap day, and first thing I hear is an annoying drunk coot Tom. Be sure to check on him.
Hey, they can say all they want. I know I don't drink, so they can say whatever they want. Hey, and here's the thing. All these Clemson fans that want to talk, let's talk on Monday. Cole, I've called all year. I've called you after losses. I've called you after wins. If Clemson wins the game, I'll be one of the first to call you at 5 o'clock. If Carolina wins the game, I want to hear from all these Clemson fans that like to send in text and try to take jabs. Because if you're going to text it and you're going to take a jab send a jab via text, call in. Call in when you lose. That's what real winners do.
I love you guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic Thanksgiving. And for all you Clemson fans out there, I hope the dog eats your turkey, because on Saturday, the Gamecocks are going to be the ones feasting, and you guys are going to be sitting there very, very disappointed. The Gamecocks are going to win the game 35-7. Go Gamecocks.
Thanks, Tom. God. Oh, geez.
So I think Tom would like us to write down these phone numbers, Cole, and start calling some people back.
Keep receipts.
Keep those receipts.
We're supposed to be picking games here.
Yeah, we're not going to have time. We're going to have to go to Steven. Let's go to Steven and find out what Steven has to say. Steven, hey.
Mama said Tom's so mad because he got those trophy cases. They ain't got no trophies in.
He just dropped the phone.
Did he drop the mic?
He dropped the mic and took off.
No, he dropped the mic on Tom.
You could have said they got all them feather dusters and nothing to dust.
I'm telling you, man, whenever Tom calls, the text line and the stream, it's like an old type, just like a old typewriter. I mean, it goes ballistic.
Texter says, please have Tom call back Monday with that same energy. Fat Paid says, when Clemson wins, I don't want to hear this guy anymore. Texter says, we need a welfare check on Tom. Is everything okay? Texter says, does Tom live in a van down by the river?
Anatola says, can't judge a game off of history, proceeds to justify a pick off of history. You know what? That is Somerville. There must be something in the water in Somerville, man. I'm just telling you.
And lastly, Texter says, Tom for South Carolina athletic director.
I love it. Can we get we can get a few of these in? We squeeze some in?
Are you sure? Okay. Let's do these. We'll have to kind of run through these quickly. Okay. We'll pick them up later. We'll start right there, Cole. South Carolina, Clemson. Ooh. Clemson favored by 2.5. We go by the spreads that we have.
We're picking the
right
spreads.
Now. We're picking against the spread.
I think South Carolina covers. I think South Carolina covers the 2.5 Diesel because I think South Carolina wins the game. I do.
So.
Yeah, I really do.
I'm gonna say Clemson covers, but on a last-second field goal to win the game, Cole.
Okay.
So they may be down by 2. Okay. They kick that field goal to win, and they win by 1 point. All right. Michigan, Ohio State, 21-point favorites are the Buckeyes.
This one's tough. I'll say Michigan covers. It's a rivalry game, Diesel. Ohio State's going to win the game, but 21 points is a lot of points, and I think Michigan covers. It's at is it at Ohio State or at Michigan?
It's at Ohio State.
Yeah, I think it's a 20-point, 18-point game, something like that.
Yeah, I think there's too much pride in that Michigan sideline. The skill is all with Ohio State. I'm going to go with you. I think Michigan covers in this game. Cole, we go to the border war. Washington at Oregon. Oregon, 19.5-point favorites.
Oh, my God.
Right?
19.5.
A year ago, this was a completely different story.
Yeah, Washington's they fell off. You know what? I'm going to go with the dog again. I'm going to go with the dog. I think Washington covers the 19.5.
I think Oregon's so good, they're going to just absolutely boat race Washington.
They might.
So I'm going to go with Oregon to cover in that one. Now we go to the Country Music I-40 Bowl, Tennessee minus 10.5 at Vanderbilt.
Tennessee covers, believe it or not. I do think Vandy's a great story. Mm-hmm. Tennessee covers.
I'm going to differ with you right there. I think Vanderbilt is going to be jacked up just enough to cover the spread. I don't think they win the game, but I do think they cover the spread in this one. The Iron Bowl, Cole, Auburn at Bama minus 11.5.
Give me the 11.5 all day. Auburn covers. Auburn covers. It wouldn't shock me if Auburn won the game. Alabama's not Alabama. Alabama's, I'm not going to say they're a fraud, but yeah, I love that. Give me all, I say that, and the opposite will happen.
No, I think this Auburn team's going to fall flat.
You think so?
They shot everything they had last week. You know, they're out of fireworks. They got nothing left. Alabama and Kayla DeBoer are going to get it done. So I'm going to say Alabama covers. The Lone Star Showdown, Cole, Texas minus 6 at A&M.
Oh, 6 points. This one's fascinating. This one's at A&M, and it's game day.
Yep.
Texas covers.
Wow.
The Longhorns win by 7.
Wow. Okay. I'm with you. I'm with you. I think I didn't choose this one because there wasn't enough points on it for my upset pick. I don't feel great about A&M's chance to get it done, but I do think Texas covers. I think they probably win by more like 10.
Okay.
Let's go to the Egg Bowl. Mississippi State at Ole Miss minus 26. That's disrespectful.
I can't pick 26 points. I just can't do it. I'll take the Bulldogs, who have won like 2 games, to cover. I cannot pick a rivalry game with 26 points on the line. That's a lot of points
on the line. That's winning by 4 touchdowns plus.
Yeah.
I think Ole Miss gets it done. I think Ole Miss just absolutely embarrasses Mississippi State. So we'll pick up. We got Battle for the Barrel, NC State, UNC, the Sunshine Showdown, dumbest name of any of these games, the Duel in the Desert as well, plus one more surprising game. We'll get to that later.
Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central. He was in Shane Beamer's presser earlier today. Jack will join us next. It is time to talk a little South Carolina football, as we all know what is on the horizon Saturday. So good to be with you, Tolos. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate. We bring in Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, good friend of the show. Jack, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Cole. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure for you to join us right here on the Fan Upstate, as we're just a few days away now, man, from this game on Saturday. Just in what you do, your daily grind, the writing for Gamecock Central, what has been the biggest, I don't want to say storyline, but what's the one thing that everybody you've talked to has come back to when it comes to Saturday's game?
I think it's the elephant in the room, right? That maybe the teams don't try to talk about because maybe they don't want to jinx it or whatever or look ahead. But it's the playoff implications. Like, I think whether you want to accept reality or not, it's up to you. But I think we all know deep down this game between South Carolina and Clemson is bigger than just a trophy game or state pride and bragging rights and stuff. This game could potentially be one that sets the future of maybe one of these teams getting into the playoff. I'm not saying it's a surefire thing, but it makes the committee's job a lot tougher in that, okay, whoever wins this game, they're going to get a definite look at and potentially making the playoff here in a few weeks.
Jack, a lot has been made about the injuries that Clemson has on the offensive line. What can you tell me about South Carolina's injury situation? Anything nagging, anything that's probable to keep some guys out?
I'll put it the way Shane Beamer put it today. We'll see. Those are his direct words. Look, we haven't really been getting much information, quite honestly, from Beamer on the injury situation. I'm going to head over to his Carolina Calls radio show here in a little bit to try to see if we hear anything else more. But it seems that Vandrevius Jacobs, wide receiver for Carolina, is probably the biggest what if for this weekend in terms of his injury, which is like a hamstring that flared up against Wofford. But other than that, I think the other one you're probably holding your breath about a little bit is the situation with the tight ends. We know Brady Hunt's not going to be available this weekend. What about Josh Simon? What about Michael Smith? You need at least one of those guys, in my opinion, to have success on offense this weekend. You can win without them, but it would be a lot better if you had a Josh Simon out there or Michael Smith, like I said.
Jack, from the players and the coaches you've talked to, is there a confidence you felt and seen this week leading up that South Carolina fans and players and coaches maybe just might not have had in the past?
There wasn't any I'm going to be honest, Cole, there wasn't a big quote or anything that you would just hear and you're like, oh man, the trash talk has begun. They're confident, they're feeling it. There wasn't anything like that. I think they know they're confident in themselves, but it's there wasn't any jarring message said or anything like that. And maybe it's only because we spoke to 3 players in Beamer today. But I think there's a quiet confidence that South Carolina can go out here and win this game, because I think the playing field is a lot more even this time around and more level compared to years past where in the mid 2010s, it's Clemson dominating this rivalry. Now it's South Carolina has a chance to go out here and do something about it.
Jack, you look at early this season, South Carolina looked tight and looked a little lost in the big game against Ole Miss. Obviously, the scoreboard reflected that. And I think we've obviously seen this team grow up a considerable amount since then. What do your senses tell you about Shane Beamer's desire and likelihood, I guess, of going a little off script, going a little bit rogue, trying some things out that, essentially pulling out all the stops and the trick plays and things like that?
Well, we've already seen him do it quite a bit this year, right? I mean, who could forget the Ole Miss game where they decided to run a fake punt on the first offensive drive of the game? I could totally see that happening this weekend. I think this is a game where you're going to have to win, not just on offense and defense, but you're going to also have to win on special teams. And where do you see some trick plays? Special teams, and especially with Beamer ball being what it is. So I think we could definitely see something like that this weekend. However, I think the situation has to be proper for it. I think you have to be at the right, side of the field or something. You can't be at your own 20-yard line and try that stuff like they did against Ole Miss. you got to do something different, and it has to be the right situation. Like I said, you can't be doing it when you're trailing maybe 7-0, and it's your first drive of the game. Like, you cannot be doing that, at least in my opinion. But who's to say?
Jack, you know what's interesting? When you look at South Carolina, who's already been to Alabama this year, Shane Beamer said today that the crowd is going to be a factor. And I quote, "This will be different," and we talked about it. I mean, crowd noise will be an issue. That's what Shane Beamer said today. When you look at Clemson, obviously it's a noon game. We all know that game times don't dictate outcomes. However, the energy level is obviously different at noon than it is for a 7:30 kick. What do you make of this being a noon game and the crowd that South Carolina will have to walk into?
Yeah, I think it's going to help South Carolina, the fact that this is an earlier game in the day. You and I have talked about before, Cole, that, look, if this were a night game at Clemson, I think Carolina would have a much tougher time winning. It's not to say they can't, but there's just something about going into a night atmosphere for any team in general on the road that makes it tougher. And it doesn't matter where you play, SEC, ACC, any of these Power 4 schools, it's going to be a tough environment. And that'll be the case at Clemson, regardless of whether the game is at night, noon, whatever the case is. Now, the fact is at noon, I feel like that plays into South Carolina's hand. We saw this 2 years ago where they went there as a big underdog, 2-touchdown underdog, and that game was at noon, and they pulled out the victory. So I think it's going to the crowd is going to be there. It's going to be hype. I mean, Clemson's going to be predominantly there over South Carolina fans. So I do expect Gamecock fans to travel, but I will say South Carolina has been in these environments before in the SEC where I think they can handle it for sure. Like, they've been to Tuscaloosa during the day. They've been to Kentucky, which was a wild crowd. They've been, I mean, I know Vanderbilt's not really much, but they've been around the SEC and they've played in these tough crowds. So I expect this week not to be different. I think they can handle it for sure.
Make sure you look up his outlet, Gamecock Central, on Twitter, talking to Jack Veltri. Jack, your publication definitely made a big deal out of the story, and it's commendable, and it deserves to be recognized that Nick Emanwari, defensive back, has teamed up with Roy's Grill for a Thanksgiving turkey giveaway. Number one, can you give us some details on just how big that event is, and things like that? How is Shane keeping this team grounded this week and keeping their minds on, hey, community service is still a big deal for us?
Yeah, no, look, I did not go to this event yesterday. We had Wes Mitchell over there. But I was at Kyle Kennard's Thanksgiving event last week. So I can provide perspective just in general on that. Look, the fact that these guys are using their NIL and using their platform to go out here and provide service to the community when, look, they don't have to. Like, there's always the perception out there that football players and athletes in general are all about themselves and me first and all that. But it's good to see guys that are out there and doing these types of things. And I think that's a direct correlation and reflection of how Shane Beamer is. Like, he's such a nice guy, and he's always taking time for the fans and stuff. And I think you see that mentality reflected in his players. And yeah, look, there's a big game this weekend and stuff, but it is also Thanksgiving week, and we've seen it before with guys like DeCarrion Joyner giving back to the community and having these Thanksgiving turkey drives and stuff. So it doesn't surprise me at all to see Nicky Emanwari doing something like that. He's a good dude. So is Kyle Kennard. And again, like I said, it's a direct reflection of Beamer.
Hey, Jack, we talk a lot about matchups within a game, right? The games within a game. When you look at this matchup on Saturday with Clemson and South Carolina, what matchups within the game are you looking forward to the most?
I think the matchup we need to see in this game is who gets more pressure on the other quarterback. And what I mean by that is South Carolina's defensive line's been great all year, as we know by this point. Clemson's been pretty good too. Who is going to be the team that gets to Cade Klubnik or Lenore Sellers? Who's going to be the team that forces one of them to make a mistake potentially? And I think, look, we've said it all year. South Carolina's defensive line has been a test for any team unlike any other out there. And Clemson, let's be fair, they faced Georgia this year. That's probably the toughest defensive line they've faced. They've faced ACC competition. But now they're getting a team like South Carolina that they know is very good, and they're going to look, their offensive line's a little banged up and stuff. How does that play this weekend? I think South Carolina has been playing better on the offensive line, and they're always been solid on the D line. So I think South Carolina in this matchup could definitely win up front.
Jack, what item that's always on your family's Thanksgiving spread do you always go right back to for first, for seconds? That's question number one. I'll give you a second to think about that. Question number two, if Shane Beamer and Dabo Swinney sat down at the same Thanksgiving dinner table and football was an off-limits conversation, what do you think they would talk about?
Oh, God. I mean, if I'm being honest, like, I don't know, politics. Like, I feel like that's always something that gets brought up at the Thanksgiving table, right? Now, I don't know, family, Jesus, like, something like that. You know, as for what I would have on my sides, first one, I've always been a big mashed potatoes guy. I think that, you know, any greens normally, stuff like that.
Jack, you will be in an open air press box Saturday. Are you an open air press box kind of guy, or do you prefer it closed in like at Williams-Brice?
Nah, I prefer the closed in. I think I like the idea of the open press box, but it's going to be cold on Saturday, y'all, and it's gonna have to bring a jacket for sure.
Have you been there before?
No, well, I've been to a game there before in general, but not covering a game.
Yeah. Diesel and I were there and have been there. Look, you can be, if you're on the front row, you've got fans, arm length that
reach out and touch them.
Reach out and touch fans. That's how open air it is, Jack.
Oh boy, I can't wait to do that. Looking so forward to
it. Jack, I know a lot of recruits are making big decisions, and I know South Carolina's picked up a handful of big ones. Look, this game has major implications, right? Some of these kids are making decisions in real time based on how the teams that they're interested in are doing. In your mind, or that you know of, are there any recruits that could very well be making a decision based on the outcome of this game?
I think one that we have to keep an eye on, I think he's going to end up being a Gamecock, but probably Donovan Murph, right? Like, he was just at Clemson this past weekend, and look, the thought process is he's going to be a Gamecock, but I mean, look, a game like this, I think most recruits probably know which way they're leaning. I don't know. Both teams are in good spots right now. I mean, what's not to like about Dabo? What's not to like about Shane Beamer? And I think they're going in good directions, but ultimately I feel like these recruits probably know by now where they're at.
Jack, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate the heck out of you, and I will see you on Saturday.
Yeah, appreciate it, fellas. I'll see you guys on Saturday. Thanks so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too,
Thanks, Jack.
Really good stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, open air press box or
I love
closed
the
in?
open air.
I hate it.
I hate being behind glass.
No, I can't. I cannot. I don't know why.
Man. Look, I want the vibration. I want the feel. I want the noise. I want all of it. I want all of it.
I think South Carolina's press box just kind of.
It's nice. I've been in South Carolina's press box several times.
Just big.
I don't like. So here's a good example for you, Cole. And here's where you kind of meet in the middle. Mm-hmm. App State's press box has openable windows. So
and I think Carolina's does.
Yeah,
the Panthers does.
The whole the bottom section, the large windows. Like I'm talking 10, 15 foot tall windows split in the middle, and you can raise them up if the weather's nice, and you can close them down if the weather's bad. I mean, I'm also kind of a wuss, Cole, and if it's like a November, December game, I'd rather have the windows down and stay warm.
No,
personally.
I'm with you. I think the Panthers also have the open windows, but it's different. You're right. I mean, we talked about it. You're right there amongst the fans.
I mean, a lot of them are standing up on the seats, kind of blocking you. You can't see around them.
Big thanks to Jack, though. He does great work at Gamecock Central and On 3.
I don't think Shane and Dabo would talk politics. I don't think.
I think they talk probably family,
philosophy.
Faith, football. I mean, if they couldn't talk football,
just general philosophies.
I'd go definitely faith if I had a guess. That's a good question though. If you can't talk football, I don't know that they would. Those two would. They might. I don't know.
Yeah, and hey, things could change. You get down a couple drinks. Again, Dabo probably doesn't drink
eggnog.
Yeah, give him a couple virgin daiquiris, and maybe he'll say, you know what, we'll throw caution to the wind and talk football.
I like it. What do we have coming up?
Coming up in the next segment, Cole, let's get back to our upset picks and finish off the list of bowl games that we didn't get to earlier. That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. Cole, I love rivalry week. I think it's the best week in college football, and I'm not really ashamed to say it. I think it's the best week of sports year round. I don't care what anyone has to say. Cole, we've been picking rivalry games against the spread. The question is who's going to get more right. But we've gone down to half the list so far. To quickly recap, the Palmetto Bowl, I think Clemson wins and covers, but just barely. I think that you said that South Carolina is going to cover that 2.5 point spread. In the game, Michigan at Ohio State -21. Both of us think Michigan is going to cover. We disagreed on the border war. Washington at Oregon. You said Washington covers. I said Oregon covers and just absolutely slaps them.
Yeah, they should. That amount of points scares me. That amount of points scares me. It's a lot of points.
That's a lot. The Country Music Bowl, the I-40 Bowl, Tennessee at Vanderbilt, Tennessee, 10.5 point favorites. I say Vanderbilt covers. You say Tennessee covers that one. The Iron Bowl, Auburn at Alabama. I say Alabama comes out with their hair on fire and crushes Auburn. You said Auburn would cover that
Auburn
spread.
Covers, man. Let's go. I want a good Iron Bowl.
Yeah, me too. God. The Lone Star Showdown, Texas -6 at A&M. Both of us said Texas will cover. The Egg Bowl, Mississippi State at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to absolutely pummel Mississippi State. They're going to try to do anything they can to get back into the playoff conversation. It's not going to happen.
I want to change that one. I want to change my Ole Miss.
I said Ole Miss. You're going to go Ole Miss too?
I think Ole Miss covers. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Ole Miss
I think
covers.
you've talked me into it. I think so.
All right, here we are, Cole, to the ones that we haven't picked.
Okay.
How about the battle for the barrel? NC State at North Carolina. The Heels are favored by 2.5.
Fired their coach on Tuesday. Wednesday, they're looking for a coach. Thursday, they find someone in the locker room who isn't supposed to be there that they name the coach. Friday, they practice. Saturday, NC State covers.
Really?
NC State covers. I think I'm telling you.
NC State covers. Do you think they win the game?
Well, I think they could.
Yeah, we're not picking who wins the game. We're just picking who covers the spread.
This is my last chance for Dave Doran to do what I thought he could do. They're in shambles. Defense is terrible.
I like this hand gesture thing. You're really animated in this,
like a preacher.
Well, now you're thinking the way Cole Bryson thinks because you're actually putting your gambling hat on.
I know. Give me
not that you've ever done that.
No, I don't know what that is. Give me North Carolina State.
I got the Heels covering in that one. The Sunshine Showdown. Hard to say. Come on, guys, you got to come up with something better than that.
Sunshine Showdown. I don't like that.
Florida -14.5 at Florida State.
Listen to this. A year ago, let's go back in time for a second to November 26, 2023. I'm pretty sure you were sitting in this room at that very moment.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd told you, hey, next year Florida will be favored by Florida State, or Florida will be favored over Florida State by 14 points, you would have called me crazy, Diesel. 14's a lot. Gosh.
Well, to be fair, Cole, at this point a year ago, we knew that Jordan Travis wasn't going to play.
Oh, was he already hurt?
Games.
He was already hurt?
Because that injury occurred on November 18th.
Oh, God, just like, a week ago.
So we were, we were 8 days.
So 51 weeks prior. Oh, or 53 weeks prior. Oh, that's, you know what? I'll say Florida State. Florida covers.
Yeah.
Florida covers.
Florida's going to beat the tar out of the Seminoles. How about the duel in the desert, Cole? Arizona State -9.5 at Arizona. ASU's a good team.
Yeah, I think I'll take the 9.5. I think Arizona State covers in that one.
I agree. Arizona State covers in that one. And Cole, finally, this could be the tiebreaker because this is game number 11. Deeper than hate. App State at Georgia Southern. The Eagles are favored by 2.5. App State is fighting for bowl eligibility.
It's at Georgia Southern?
It's at Georgia Southern.
What town's that in?
Statesboro.
I'll go Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern covers, you think?
Yep, just so you can go opposite, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go opposite.
Yes.
I'm going to go App State
gotta go
covers.
opposite on that one.
App State covers in this one. I think they win.
Oh, really?
The football game as well. Yeah. Close the season out on 2 wins.
I can't remember how bad. I'm serious. I don't know. Was it bad last week with JMU?
It was 34-20.
Okay, so not too bad.
No, not a butt whooping. I mean, App State kind of controlled the fourth quarter in that game. And I think they took them out of the game mentally when all the fans were chucking snowballs at them.
Yeah, I think that'll be a decent game.
So there you go. We agreed on. I'd say without kind of going down the list because this is bad radio. We agreed on 1, 2, 3, 4. We agreed on 4 out of those games. So yeah, hey, a lot of room. Things could get fun. Hey, want to remind you, Tolos, that today and tomorrow are your only opportunities to get us your upset picks for week number 14, as we are not going to be here on Thursday or Friday. We are not going to be checking the text line on Thursday and Friday. We're telling you right now, any picks that come in on Thursday and Friday are invalid. You have to get your picks to us today during the show, so before 7 o'clock today, or tomorrow from 3 to 7. I need your name, your game, and the spread at ESPN.com. That's what we use for our official spreads. Go there, find a game where you think the betting underdog will win the game outright, and then text it to us at 71307 with your name, your game, and the spread.
And I won't be here tomorrow, which is why in the very next segment, Diesel, I'm going to give you my final thoughts on South Carolina Clemson. We will predict what we think's going to happen. I'll give you a score. I've already teased it. If you've been TOLOing, which stands for turn on, leave on. If you've said it and left it, if you will, you've heard who I think is going to win. We'll do one final deep dive before Thanksgiving vacation. Clemson, South Carolina predictions next. Diesel, we are so close. Just a few days away. Clemson, South Carolina on Saturday, the Palmetto Bowl, if you want to call it that, even though hardly any fans call it that anymore. But I
remember when they used to call the Clemson NC State game the Textile
Bowl. Yeah. I just remember that because of the video game. That's the only reason I remember that, because it said Textile
I went to
Bowl.
a few Textile Bowl. That's how old I am.
Yeah, Textile. You're back in the Stone Ages. Want to get into the game on Saturday here. Give my official prediction, because Diesel will be solo tomorrow. And this is my last day on air this week. And obviously we won't have a show on Friday because Friday's Black Friday. So you'll have to use the Odyssey app and listen to the shows of the past this week if you really want to hear Diesel and I. But Diesel, it is a 2.5-point spread as of right now. And that's where we will start with the point spread. We did our rivalry picks a few segments ago. But Clemson, South Carolina, as Jack Veltri of Gamecock Central said, I thought he said this very well. The elephant in the room, the biggest mantra, Diesel, surrounding the game is the fact that the winner could have an outside chance, a bubble shot, if you will, at the college football playoff, which, by the way, we'll know those rankings in 1 hour from now at 7 p.m. when those rankings come out tonight. I believe that this could set up for an instant classic, just like Jack said. If I told you, though, that one team got blown out, just a little fun to start the segment. If I told you Saturday was a blowout, who would you say won the game?
Oh, probably South Carolina.
Wow.
Honestly, yeah. I think, look, we saw them do it to Oklahoma. We've seen South Carolina surge these past couple of weeks. And, I think there could be one of those situations where they score a touchdown early, pick Cade Klubnik off, run it back, scoop and score, or interception like pick six. And this thing just sort of gets out of control. And you see Dabo look kind of bewildered on the sideline, which is not going to be something you've seen from him in a very long time.
Well, it's interesting. I think this game could go several ways. However, I'll tell you, Diesel, and I'll tell our Tolos, just like I told Jack Veltri this morning. Him and I were talking this morning for an article he was doing on the game that's going to come out later this week. But I said I think the more physical team wins Saturday. The team, in my mind, that can assert themselves as the most physical football team and be dominant in the trenches, be dominant up front, I think that team's got a really good shot. We talk about this a lot at all levels of football, but late in the year, man, in order to win games, you got to have a good defense, and you got to be able to run the football. And South Carolina can do both of those. The added element of Lenoris running, I think, will be something that Clemson will struggle with. We saw against, was it Virginia Tech, when Cade broke that long run to pretty much ice the game. Cade can do it, but Cade's not a runner like Lenoris is. I think you have to prepare, Diesel, if you're Clemson, for Rocket and Lenoris. Yeah. And that added threat, with them being physical up front and the defensive line, those two in the backfield, not knowing who's going to get the football and where they might go, I think that's enough for me to give South Carolina the edge. And I am going to pick South Carolina to win the game on Saturday.
Well, we know that football is a game of split-second decisions. It's a game of inches. It's the tried and true saying about it. And the difference there is Lenoris plans to run.
Yeah, he does.
Cade doesn't when he has to. And Cade is very competent. He's quick enough. He's as quick as he needs to be when it comes to running the football. They just don't do it a lot with Cade. And maybe that part of that's just they want to protect him and do what they can there, Cole. As we went down our position-by-position drafts to put together our Palmetto All-Star team, I went like 2 to 5 with the different position groups that we had. I picked 2 Clemson position groups, and I picked 5 South Carolina position groups. But the thing is, a lot of those groups, it really is like a hair's decision. When you're choosing between Rocket Sanders and Phil Maffa, both of those are fantastic running backs. I think Rocket has just a little bit more versatility than Phil Maffa does. And we've also seen I think it was even the Louisville game where Phil Maffa was picking up like 4.5, 5.5 yards per carry, but they wouldn't give him the ball because, well, they needed to score quickly. And I'm thinking, why don't you just keep feeding him, let him bust open a big run, and because clearly he's finding success against this defensive line. I think there's just several position groups where South Carolina gets that slight edge. I think this is a really close football game. I just wonder, Cole, how much the nerves are going to get to the Gamecock players in this game. And I'm not trying to gas up Clemson and Death Valley in any way. I'm just saying it is a big game.
And it's going to be loud. There's going to be a lot of people there, man.
These guys have played in big games. The Gamecock players, they played in big games this season.
Yeah. And
you can always say that players these days just don't quite care about the rivalry and have the same passion for it the same way that the fans do. But I'm going to tell you, these guys care.
They care.
They want to beat them. They want to beat them badly, and I just wonder if that leaves this team playing just a little bit tight.
It could. You do sometimes play tight in big games, Diesel. I'll tell you this. I think South Carolina will draw off of the experience in Tuscaloosa, where it was a loud crowd, earlier in the day. They made a few mistakes, too many, in order to win the game. South Carolina played well, but what cost them in that game? Turnovers. We talked about it. Lenoris throwing interceptions, and obviously the ones that hurt him in that game were putting the ball on the ground. I think they draw off of that, and I think that allows them to and Shane Beamer's talked about this so many times this year. I think that allows them to be more refined, Diesel, going into this game. I told Jack Veltri this morning, one thing that's impressed me about South Carolina down the stretch is Beamer said it Saturday night after the Wofford win to the media. They have truly taken a week-by-week approach. They've won 5 games in a row now, South Carolina has. That in the SEC, Diesel, that's tough. And I know one of them was against Wofford, but still, they've won 5 games in a row. The approach that this staff and the team has to every game, that is so impressive to me because it's so hard to win games in the SEC, man. And they've done it 5 weeks in a row, which tells me they're prepared, they're approaching every week with the right sense of urgency, and they're respecting their opponent. I don't think South Carolina will walk into this game underestimating Clemson in any way Saturday.
I mean, yeah, you make some really good points there, Cole. Isn't it fun? Like a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the high likelihood that the Dowell Loggins was not going to be brought back. And man, has that changed?
Yeah.
This team looks really good. They've cut down on a lot of the mistakes on the offensive side. They seem to be making intelligent play calls. Look, it doesn't always work. I mean, there was I wrote it down here, Cole. There was a touch pass that South Carolina ran against Wofford on Saturday, which I don't even think went for a gain. I just thought it was a really interesting play that they could have used. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. There was a touch pass that Clemson ran that kind of operated like a sweep. And I just wondered why they would even run that play. Why would they run that against Citadel and show it instead of leaving it as a mystery against South Carolina? Look, this game is going to be really good. I think this is, for the first time in a long time, both of these fan bases are going into this game expecting to win. There's expecting and hoping. And most years, especially over the last 5 or 6, Clemson expects to win. South Carolina hopes to win. This year is different.
No, that's right.
Both of these fan bases expect to win. It's going to be a great game.
I'll tell you, the only thing that concerns me, I picked South Carolina to win, and I'll give you a score in a second. But, Diesel, what does concern me is South Carolina's receiving core not being able to produce consistently enough in this game. We've seen them come on as of late. Against Missouri, Lenora Sellers threw 5 touchdown passes, and all 5 of those were to 5 different receivers. So they have come on as of late. You've seen guys catch touchdowns that you never heard of before. However, I do think in a big game, you mentioned playing tight earlier. I think my red flag for South Carolina on Saturday will be getting the productivity out of the wide receiver group in this game in order to stretch the field. You and I were at the App State game, and Clemson stretched the field.
Yeah.
They had big plays. They were explosive. They
a lot
were
of play
aggressive.
action, too.
I'm telling you, that's what concerns me. If Clemson somehow makes this a track meet and challenges South Carolina to really attack downfield, that's the area where I have concern. I don't know against Clemson's defense. I don't know if South Carolina's wide receivers will look as good as they did against Missouri. I think that would be my red flag. I'm going to go 30-24. South Carolina wins on Saturday. I struggled with the number 30 because I don't know if South Carolina will score that many points. I think it's fairly close, but I like the Gamecocks by 6, 30-24. What would you say in terms of score, Diesel, if you had to give a score in terms of how many points will be scored on Saturday?
Well, let me go back to what you said there for just 1 second.
Yeah.
You said that if Clemson can bait South Carolina into playing downhill and being aggressive. Now, South Carolina has the third most number of sacks in the country. This defensive line is fantastic, right? And who knows? Maybe you got Dylan Stewart, who wants to try to get 2 or 3 sacks in this game, starts playing a little aggressive, starts over pursuing. And then, of course, you got, play action that could get set up and really throw the ball over the top. I like that as Clemson's opportunity to be able to exploit the aggressiveness of this South Carolina defense. I've got Clemson covering in this game, winning and covering. I'm going to say, man, I think something weird happens in this game. We might even see a safety in this game. I'm going to say
that'd be nuts.
I'm going to say Clemson covers, wins by 5.
Okay.
I'm going to say 26-21 Clemson.
Ooh. So you and I are we're going 2 different sides here.
Yep.
26-21. That's an interesting one. I can see, I had a little bit of concern, a little bit of worry with South Carolina getting to 30. So I could definitely see that. I just don't know. I'll tell you what concerns me for Clemson. I told you what concerned me for South Carolina. What concerns me for Clemson is the lack of aggressiveness down the stretch in these ACC games. When they won 6 games in a row against App State and Wake, and they were winning big games, Diesel, or winning games by a big margin, they were so aggressive. They were attacking. And I didn't see that against Virginia Tech. I didn't see that against Louisville. I thought that first half against Virginia Tech was sour.
Like they were playing not to lose?
Well, it's just, tight. And you said tight a minute ago. They played tight, and both of those were road games. And I know they'll be at home Saturday, so they'll take shots. But I'll tell you this, Clemson, what concerns me for them is if they can't get that run game going and Cade's having to go out there and really press, throws a pick, and you see Cade having to press, I think South Carolina may have them right where they want them. I really do. And I think there's so many matchups within the game. Jack brought up South Carolina's defensive line. That defensive line versus Clemson's offensive line, Diesel. I think that impacts the game in terms of who wins and loses.
How healthy are they?
Well,
yeah.
I was told yesterday, we know that they had 9 total offensive linemen hurt. I was told yesterday they'll have 3 starters back. So I was told they'll be okay in terms of starters. They might have some depth issues with injuries. Having Clemson's tight end and Jake Brenningstool back is huge. Diesel David Hood talked about that yesterday. You've got to have a guy. I'll tell you this. I'm the Cowboys fan. Tony Romo's favorite receiver was his tight end, Jason Witten. It was a safety valve. I think Cade's got to have a safety valve Saturday. And Brenningstool being back on the field is important because South Carolina's going to bring the blitz. They're going to bring guys. And if you can have Brenningstool as a quick out, quick safety valve, even in the red zone, he likes Brenningstool as a red zone target. I think that'll be important for Cade. I worry about that pass rush. That is a ferocious pass rush.
Cole, a little live update here for you. The Clemson Tigers men's basketball team has just beaten Penn State. Let's see if I can find the score here. 75-67. That was played at Ocean Center at Daytona Beach, Florida. So Clemson now 6-1 on the season.
We've got Michigan State, Memphis on in the Maui Invitational. Look at that court, man.
Love it.
That is awesome.
Absolutely love it.
We also had a few
I wish we
other
got some more creativity on a lot of college basketball courts. You know, just show some flair. Show
I like
some
the
color.
flair, man. I love the paint right there with the flowers. That's awesome. That is such a cool look. Obviously, being Hawaii, but we also have had a few more upset picks come in.
Yes, we have. Let's see here. Let's go back just a little bit. Joe D is taking Memphis plus 14.5 over Tulane. Matt J wants Central Michigan over Northern Illinois plus 12.5. Buckeye Mike wants Syracuse plus 11 over Miami. Ben in Simpsonville is taking Fresno State plus 10 over UCLA. Man, UCLA can't get no respect in their own town. They're playing Fresno State on rivalry weekend.
That's tough.
Bro.
Why is USC-UCLA not rivalry weekend?
Because Notre Dame gets precedence over UCLA.
Oh, my gosh.
Mark L.O. Ducks also rolling with Memphis plus 14.5 over Tulane. Twisted Whisker says give him Syracuse plus 11 over Miami. Twisted Whisker in first place in this challenge, by the way.
Unbelievable.
Twisted Whisker in first place. He's got, I think, 79 points without jumping over there to find that information. Let's see. We have Mike Main, who wants Vanderbilt plus 11 over Tennessee. Boiling Springs Dave rolling with you, taking Maryland over Penn State plus 25. And Forrest also wants Fresno State over UCLA. That Cole makes 50 picks for the first day. That's very good. That's very good. We'd like to get about 10 more of you Tolos to text in and give us your upset.
What was yours?
My upset pick was Cole, the Memphis plus 14.5 over Tulane. You got two really good football teams there. And this is where it comes down to the last game of the season, possible outside shot at a playoff opportunity for Tulane. That'd be a very, very outside shot. But think about that, Cole.
Sorry.
If chaos happens, especially in the Big 12, you might get a Mountain West and American Athletic team in over a Big 12 team.
Sorry for the ones on the stream that can't hear it, but here's what's going to happen this weekend. Maryland is going to upset Penn State. I am going to catapult all the way inside the top 30, Diesel. And Maryland, the Fighting Terrapins. This is their fight song, if you didn't know. Go Terps. Maryland is going to win. One of the biggest upsets in college football is going to happen this weekend as Maryland is going to take down number 4, the fraud Penn State Nittany Lions. Diesel, I am trying my best to speak it into existence. I don't even know if I've ever watched a full Maryland football game before, probably when they played Clemson when they were in the ACC.
That's because you can't look at it. The uniforms are horrible to look at.
Red and yellow.
It's
Who
bad.
has a worse color scheme than Maryland? I mean, really.
Cole, you got a game that's worth 25 points. If you hit on this, you would have 35 points in this challenge, which would put you 2 points ahead of me. Actually, 3 points ahead of me, because if I get mine wrong, I'd be down to 32 points.
What do you mean if I hit?
You're not going to
hit. I hit. No.
You're not going to hit.
Diesel, come on. You have little faith. You don't, I know they're like 1-9. They might have won. Let me look real quick. What's their record? They've won 4 games. They've won 4 games. It might have been over nobody's. They're 1-7 in the Big Ten. They're 4-7 overall. And again, Penn State is favored by 25 points on Saturday at 3:30.
Wow.
I need a lot of prayer and luck in this one, man.
You need help. You need psychiatric help for choosing that one.
You're right.
By the way, we just got one in from Gravy, who's picking Michigan over Ohio State plus 21 points. Gravy has gotten his pick in, and James Owen says, give me the Turtles over those Kittens for 25 points. James Owens rolling with you, and now we have 52 picks in. Cole, when we come back, let's replay the conversation we had earlier with Chapel Fowler. Had a fantastic chat with him from the Clemson perspective, also talking about some big announcements coming out of the athletic department. That's next on the Fan Upstate.
Today, as we are getting you ready for rivalry week, we're going to pick all of the rivalry games this weekend later on in the show. But now we bring in Chapel Fowler of the State newspaper, who is a good friend of the show. And Chapel, I want to start with a pretty viral tweet that you sent out today where you said Clemson coach Dabo Swinney says he knows what percentage of the Tigers' $20.5 million revenue sharing with athletes is going to the football team. He doesn't reveal it, but he offers this: ain't nobody going to have more money than Clemson for the first time ever. Chapel, for those that have not heard this news yet about the letter that was sent out from Graham Neff, can you fill us in and welcome into the show as always, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be considered a friend of the program now. That's a nice little designation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, a newsy day in Clemson today, and not just because of the Palmetto Bowl game coming up. Essentially, now this has been swirling for a while, and every school is prepping for it, but we're getting closer and closer to that date next summer where this NCAA versus House settlement is going to go into effect and kind of usher in a direct revenue sharing agreement where colleges are going to be able to pay their players. I think it comes out to 22% of their combined like media, tickets, and all this stuff sale. The number is essentially going to be $20.5 million at maximum per school. And kind of what Clemson announced this morning and what Graham Neff detailed and what Dabo Swinney is really excited about is that Clemson Athletics is kind of committed to paying out that maximum of $20.5 million to all their programs and obviously the athletes within them. And within that $20.5 million, we're talking a very significant chunk going to the football program directly. You know, I think kind of the recommended settlement back pay stuff, like for the previous athletes, is something like a 75-15, 5-5 split, with that 75% going to former football athletes. A lot of programs and schools are kind of use that model going forward. And based on kind of what I've heard, what others have reported, what Dabo's intimated to us today is that Clemson football is probably going to be getting even more than 75% of that share to kind of distribute among 6 players. I mean, 75% of 20 whatever million is something in the 15 million range. You know, go above that, you're getting into 16, 17. That's a nice chunk of change. Obviously, NIL can go on top of that, and that'll vary by school. But what he was saying there, and he was very specific in how he said it. He corrected somebody on it, which he doesn't do often. Like, his quote wasn't that Clemson is going to have more money than everybody else, but that nobody else will be able to have more money than Clemson, just in the fact that on this baseline $20.5 million that's going to be distributed by every school, Clemson's going to be way up near the top nationally in terms of what percentage of that is going to go to its football program specifically. And obviously that's a pretty big deal at a program that's had its struggles and its own viral issues with kind of NIL and pay for play and what they're going to do and not do.
Chapel Fowler of the State newspaper joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryce. And Chapel, do you believe that because of this, and a lot of people have bemoaned the possibility that some of the smaller programs in college football, the less financially fortunate programs in college football, are going to start finding it very, very difficult to pay a large percentage of their revenues to student athletes? Just extrapolating this down the line, do you think maybe we'll see the smaller schools requesting or demanding larger payouts for the bye games? For example, the FCS. I mean, I remember when FCS games cost teams $250,000 to play an FCS team, and now that's pushing $750,000 now. G5 games are costing $1 million, $1.5 million a pop. Do you consider that that's going to start increasing, and some maybe some tertiary expenditures will go up as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everything is just rising costs nowadays. Like, when you think about that $20.5 million number, that's not like what maybe every single school is going to offer. You know, that's the maximum to which you can pay out to your athletes, but you don't have to hit 20.5 if you're in a spot where you can't dish out that much, which I would certainly understand if some schools aren't, then you're not going to do that. But yeah, it all trickles down with this NIL stuff too, kind of this NIL clearinghouse. I think one of the things I'm interested in is, what are they going to determine as fair market value? What does that really look like? Obviously, there's legal implications there where you don't want to feel like you're limiting people from earning what they're worth, but, how does that kind of fit into the equation? And, let's say if a football program has been promised 75% of its school's revenue sharing payout, so that's split, I don't know, $15 million of the $20 million, like how much more are you kind of operating with year to year on top of that when it comes to NIL? What does that operating budget for acquisition and retention look like? Because that's kind of more of the truer number of what a lot of these teams are going to be working with. So yeah, it's another big step in what feels like there's a big step every 2 or 3 months in college sports. I think Dabo Swinney, at least from what he told us, is very much a fan of this setup, kind of the regulation that comes with it, this kind of standardized, almost like a cap, NFL salary cap of sorts, that kind of keeps stuff a little bit more in line. This idea of the NIL clearinghouse, Clemson's going to be retaining a sports marketing agency to kind of help them, sort through NIL deals. There was all that stuff over the summer about the state of South Carolina passing a law to where South Carolina and Clemson could kind of work with their athletes more directly and avoid bad actors, bad contracts, bad agents, all that stuff. I think Dabo's quote today was that we are through everything except for the back 20% of all the insanity. Like we're through 80% of the insanity was kind of his quip about how everything's gone over the last few years. But I'm certainly excited to see kind of how this all plays out. I think on its face, it certainly makes sense. And, paying athletes, I'm always going to be for that. So hopefully this kind of settles things down for everybody, not just Clemson or South Carolina, but everybody involved.
Chapel, with all that being said, in your opinion, how does that impact the way Dabo will recruit and use the portal actively?
Yeah, I think, he's already been telling people in conversations, these are like 2025 recruits, about what's ahead. Like he's telling them about how Clemson is going to have a significant amount of its revenue sharing money for athletes directly committed to the football program, and what that's going to look like. Obviously, it's going to be different for what a freshman is going to get versus a Cade Klubnik. He made a not so subtle joke today that, hey, if you're a 4th-year quarterback coming back for your 3rd year as a starter, I'd imagine you'll be pretty well off under this revenue sharing setup. So they're definitely going to reward the top guys in their program, and that's kind of what they're already doing. Clemson players do get paid through NIL deals, and some of the top ones on campus right now that have stayed, that despite kind of being dangled offers from other schools, are certainly getting paid what they're worth, but probably not to this level that this is going to usher in. So I think on a high school recruiting level, it's already, happening. I think the transfer portal part is really interesting just because, it feels like every year we're thinking, okay, is this going to be that Clemson really opens up and takes a few guys? Last year was really the most they've done in the portal, but what that amounted to was like offering some offensive linemen and then losing out to places like Georgia Tech and Ohio State because Clemson was not, like I said, willing to kind of dangle that money to players who haven't been in the program. How does this change that? I'm not totally sure. I think just given the on-the-field trajectory, kind of what they've done in the last few years, being close but not close enough. If they lose this South Carolina game, they're out of the playoff. They could win the South Carolina game and not make the ACC title game and still get left out of the playoff with a 10-2 record, depending on how they stack up with other people. Does one really good portal guy here or there change that or give you one extra win instead of one extra loss and kind of flip your fortunes? I think it's at least a possibility. So I'm interested to see how much the portal stuff happens for them this year. I don't want to bet on it, but I'd imagine it's going to be at least like last year in terms of activity, if not a little bit higher. But what that means for Clemson is obviously different than what it means for a South Carolina or somebody else.
Chapel, you touched on it there for just a second. And in the letter that Graham Neff sent out to fans, he said, quote, "We're excited about the potential of regulated commercial name, image, and likeness." You touched on the possibility for bad actors. Look, we had a salary cap at one point, and it was ostensibly zero. Right. And we had a ton of bad actors, with the with the McDonald's bag with $1,000 cash in it, et cetera, et cetera. In your mind, and I understand this is still very much in its infancy, has anyone official mentioned anything with regards to how to essentially punish bad actors? Because if we're creating a cap of some sort, somebody will always try to circumvent the rules, right? And throw some extra money under the table. Do you foresee any potential of really going after the programs and the violators here?
I'm not sure. We all know how the current NCAA like penalty system works, where you get dinged for something and then it doesn't get decided until 4 years later and ends up just kind of hurting the people who are there probably when that coaching staff has already left or been fired and stuff like that. One thing specific to this idea of this $20.5 million cap that came up a lot in Dabo's presser today was that they're, retaining this sports marketing agency. I think it's ESM, located out of Greenville. And like one of the big things for that group is going to be keeping Clemson like at that cap number and not going above it. Because as Dabo alluded to, that there's possibility of like fines if you go above the cap. So just on a very simple monetary basis on that, I think there's some level of enforcement. Like if you're going to say, hey, you can't have more than $20.5 million getting distributed, obviously you want to have some level of enforcement or like watchdog guardian of that, to where people aren't just totally saying screw that rule and going above it. So I think in that very like fine print way, there's going to be stuff. But yeah, I think it's kind of TBD on how much people are going to get punished for circumventing this stuff. Because as we've seen over the last few years, not a lot of people are really getting busted for what a lot of people are doing. It's kind of just the way it is. And the few that have, it's been pretty minimal, like infractions and stuff. Because again, college sports has always been a business, like you mentioned with the under the table McDonald's bag type stuff. Now we're just kind of finally admitting it, which is refreshing. But I don't think that totally changes like kind of the underworld part of it. So I think that's kind of a lingering question mark, and probably one that is not going to be totally solved by the system either.
Chapel, let's get to the football field on Saturday at noon. Look, a lot of anticipation for this one, maybe more anticipation than we've seen in a very long time. You've been covering this Clemson team all year and very closely. What is your lean as of this Tuesday afternoon on what fans should expect to see Saturday? Obviously, you don't have to give us a pick because I'm sure you'll do that in an article on your site later in the week. But what is your lean as of today at 3:40?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my lean more than anything else is instant classic. Like it's just really cool for the state of South Carolina, for the region, for both programs to have this game of this magnitude. I feel like in the grand scheme of things, it's easy to say this locally, but I do feel like Clemson, South Carolina football as a rivalry is maybe a little underrated nationally, just in terms of how fierce and long running and popular and influential and how much it impacts everything in the state, everybody in the state all year. I'm a North Carolina native, so you compare that to UNC, NC State football. Like Clemson, South Carolina is drastically more important and impactful than that. No question about it. So I think just the fact that it is such a national game, CFP implications, that the stakes are going to make it fun no matter what. On the field itself, outside of all that, I really do think South Carolina is playing better ball than Clemson right now. I think you look at some of their last, take out the Wofford and the Citadel games from last week and look at their most recent games against Power 5 competition, kind of what they're doing, how they're playing. This is the Clemson offense that had 51 against the Citadel last week, but that's kind of to be expected. They hadn't crossed, I think it was 24 points in any of their past 3 games before that against Louisville, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech. So it's getting back a little bit to that 2023 stretch of time when they were putting up all these yards, but they weren't scoring, like this kind of empty calorie stuff because of, turnovers or execution, a missed block here, a drop there. So this is the Clemson offense that has kind of taken a step down from that high flying 40, 50, 60 a game level that it was at earlier in the season against some weaker competition. So I don't think that group isn't totally firing on every single cylinder. And then at the same time, you got a Clemson defense that just allowed almost 300 rushing yards to an FCS team. So I think you combine those two things with what South Carolina has done in these past few weeks against a lot of ranked teams, on the road against SEC teams, coming back against Missouri, beating Oklahoma, all that stuff. I'm leaning Gamecocks right now just because I think their body of work, like as of recent, has been more impressive, at least from what I've seen week to week, looking at Clemson from the press box.
He writes for the state newspaper, Chapel Fowler, right here on the Fan Upstate with Cole Bryson and Diesel. Chapel, I want to touch one more time before we move off of it on this Graham Neff letter to fans. Can you tell us about this 150 new scholarships added across all sports? Do you think that means Clemson's going to grow some sports and add, you look at God, you look at some West Coast schools, UCLA, USC, for example, they've got so many more sports than Clemson sponsors. So are you looking at potentially adding sports here, or is it just fully funding more scholarships to the sports they already have?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter, more fully funding a lot of the sports they already have. I've been so into the football side of it today, I think for obvious reasons, because that's like the one that this affects most. I haven't looked into that part as much, but I think, Neff is on the record earlier this year as saying that they don't want to, or they don't anticipate cutting any sports from what they have right now, which I think is 21 varsity offerings. It's like 10 men, 11 women, something like that, the split. So, it's going to really positively affect a sport like baseball, where what were they working with, like 11.7 or something like that, not even enough partial scholarships for a third of the team if you were to distribute them in full. So a sport like baseball, soccer, lacrosse, I think all that is kind of where you're going to see that growth, adding that 150. And that's another really good part of this House settlement, is just kind of what it's doing and what it's allowing schools to do for some of these quote unquote non-revenue sports that are obviously still full of athletes who are awesome and work very hard and deserve to be compensated and get scholarships and all that stuff. So, I'm sure Eric Backage is like going crazy right now once he heard about what all this was going to be with like baseball scholarships and how much that's going to change. And Clemson has 2 really good soccer programs, and golf, and just across the board, some really solid teams that I'm sure are feeling really good about this stuff. So yeah, obviously all the focus is as it should be, just because football kind of drives everything nationally, and especially at Clemson with realignment and everything in college sports. That kind of is the focus and the business side of it. But if you look at what this House settlement does for all these other smaller schools, smaller programs, and just kind of the scholarship increase and what that can mean for an individual kid or family or program, that's pretty cool and certainly well-deserved. So I was glad to see that that's kind of happening all across the country. More people getting paid fairly for their work is always going to be a good thing in my book.
Chapel, 20 seconds or less. Today's show question: your most hated Thanksgiving side, cranberry sauce, deviled eggs, green bean casserole, or other?
Anything with like beets, I just can't really get into. Pickled beets, all that stuff. I'll really mix about anything else in on the plate. But for some reason, I've never been a beets guy. I'm all for cranberry and stuffing, but something about a beet, I just can't do it.
Chapel, I think the Pilgrims only ate beets because that's all they had and they didn't know any better.
That's right.
I get it.
Hey, great stuff, Chapel, as always. We appreciate you hopping on with us.
Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too, man. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Diesel, we don't have any time to do our playoff predictions.
No.
So let's hit a little Daily Wires.
Let's do it. The buzz.
Happening around the sports world. I know we had some from earlier, no new ones, as I hadn't heard any. Actually, there is one new one. Clemson defeated Penn State, right? I believe you did give us that score earlier today. Clemson defeated Penn State. But I think the biggest news in the Daily Wires is the letter that Graham Neff wrote to fans last night. Diesel outlining the post-house settlement where Clemson will add 150 scholarships, $20.5 million in revenue sharing.
Yep.
And Clemson will establish a front office. That's big news.
Yeah, front office is big. The revenue sharing, and Dabo said something about this. People kind of took him out of context a little bit, where he said nobody's going to have more money than us. That doesn't mean that that Clemson is going to have the most money. It just means that all schools are going to be playing at a level playing field when it comes to the amount of revenue they can share. So that's what Dabo meant by that. And Cole, the 150 scholarships, we asked Chapel Fowler about it. You heard it earlier. He said it's more going to be about fully funding more scholarships rather than adding new sports. And, that's one of the things that concerns me about how much I love college baseball and the parity in college baseball. And one of the reasons why there's always been parity is that a smaller school can get a good player by offering him slightly higher percentage of his scholarship. So if Clemson was only going to offer somebody 15% of their scholarship, but Coastal Carolina could offer 18% of the scholarship, that's something that could level the playing field a little bit. And I feel a little concerned that might be going away.
Well, it's interesting. It's I guess it'll be intriguing to see how it pans out. Also, North Carolina, the biggest news of the day. North Carolina announced that Mack Brown will not return next season. One day.
You're fired.
One day after the Hall of Fame coach Diesel declared his intentions to return, AD Bubba Cunningham informed Brown of his decision on Tuesday. Brown, 73, will coach the team Saturday against NC State. I was mistaken earlier, but a decision has not yet been made about whether he'll coach in the bowl game. And here's what the AD said. Oh, I'm sorry. This is what Mack Brown said. While this was not the perfect time and way in which I imagined going out, no time will ever be the perfect time. I've spent 16 seasons at North Carolina and will always cherish the memories and relationships Sally and I have built while serving as the head coach. You got to rip the Band-Aid off there, and that's what they did, right?
Mack's got a home in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Come on, Mack, come be a assistant at App State. We don't want you as head coach, but we'll take you as an assistant.
You don't want him as head too old?
No, way too old.
Papa Brown? No,
he's not that good either. I'm kidding. Well, maybe not as it not at his
anymore.
Age. Not at his
but
age.
Those are some Daily Wires. And Diesel, you'll be solo tomorrow, but you have some guests joining you, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'll have Jake Crane of Crane & Company at 3:20 tomorrow. We'll have Kelly Ford at 4:20, make you smarter with your upset picks. And, of course, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered going to be on with us at 5:40. Question is, how's he leaning with Clemson and South Carolina? I'll bet you he's leaning SEC.
No.
That'd just be my guess.
No.
Thanks for listening, Tolos.